Chapter 243. Mu Guiying nodded. I also think that it's not true. The plan was not thorough, and the consequences were already in place. In this battle, not only did they have to take down the southern pass, but they also had to save Li Anbai and his daughter. After all, Li Anbai already had the intention to surrender. He could be considered an ally of Mulan County. They could not just watch him die. General, what's your plan? Ouyang Shuo asked. Mu Guiying was confident. She said firmly, nothing else. We'll just attack. Ouyang Shuo was shocked. He looked at Mu Guiying with more admiration. Since they had already alerted the enemy, they might as well defeat them head-on. This was the right way of using troops. Mu Guiying was indeed formidable. Only by comprehending this path would one be able to grasp the essence of war. Good. Ouyang Shuo stood up. We'll do as General says. Let's move out. Yes, the generals answered. The majestic army set off from the Mulan County's north gate and headed straight for the southern pass. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the army arrived in front of the southern pass. The canyon was only 50 meters wide. The army could not spread out and stretched for several li. At the front of the formation, 10 scaling ladders were assembled. Behind the scaling ladders were 5 triple-bow, 8-bull bed crossbows that were being calibrated. The base of the scaling ladders was a wooden bed with 6 wheels. The main ladder was fixed on the chassis at a certain angle. The surroundings were protected and reinforced with cowhide. When the soldiers pushed the carts close to the city wall, it could effectively protect them from the enemy's arrows and stones. The main ladder was divided into 2 sections. It was a folding structure with a rotating shaft in the middle. When attacking the city, they only needed to stop the main ladder at the foot of the city and then set up a secondary ladder. This would reduce the danger and difficulty of setting up ladders in front of the enemy. In addition, since the scaling ladders would not touch the edge of the city too early, it could prevent the defenders from destroying them. Standing at the front of the formation was the 1st Battalion of the Forbidden Brigade that Ouyang Shuo had brought. Their mission was to cooperate with the 2 knife shield battalions of Mulan County to use the scaling ladders and the treading arrows fired by the bed crossbows to take down the city wall. Behind the Knife Shield Battalion were the 2 Archer Battalions of the City Guard Brigade. They were responsible for providing suppressive fire and covering fire. Behind them was the Shanghai County Heavy Infantry Battalion. They were responsible for taking down the city gate at the critical moment using the battering ram that Mulan County had prepared. There was a wheelbarrow under the wooden block, which could be pushed forward. Not only was the wooden block wrapped in 2 layers of iron sheets, but was also welded with barbs that gleamed with a cold light. At the end of the procession was the City Guard Brigade Cavalry Battalion that acted as reserves. The vast army paid no attention to the bandits at Southern Town Pass. They methodically made their final preparations before the war. Such a huge commotion had naturally alarmed the bandits. The bandit chief, who had just succeeded in usurping the throne, received the report and led a group of people to the city walls. Looking at the army that stretched for several li, the bandit chief couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He muttered to himself, "Who can tell me where the fuck this army came from?" The bandits on the left and right kept quiet out of fear, looking at each other in silence. Boss, could it be that it was the old bandit master who contacted us?" A mountain bandit said, trembling with fear. Although Li Anbai was under house arrest, he still enjoyed great prestige among the bandits. His subordinates still referred to him as the bandit master. The bandit chief was startled and cursed. That's most likely the case. That old fart. Even at death's door, he still wants to trick me. I'm going to kill him right now. The bandits on the left and right immediately stopped him, advising Boss the most important thing right now is how to defend against the enemy. An old man who's about to die can be ended at any time. The bandit chief naturally wasn't a fool since he had succeeded in usurping the throne. He knew that killing Li Anbai at this time would not only be of no benefit to the war, but would also cause some of Li Anbai's old subordinates to fall out with him. The gains wouldn't make up for the losses. The bandit chief was so agitated because of the sudden change in events. It hadn't been easy for him to sit on the throne, but he hadn't even had the time to enjoy it when he encountered such a trivial matter. After calming down, the bandit chief began to issue missions, deploy defenses, and gather all the bandits to the city walls to defend against the enemy. Since ancient times, the Southern Guard Pass not only had thick walls, but it also had an abundant supply of defensive resources. There was no lack of stones or logs. This was also the source of the bandit chief's confidence. After the bandits dispersed, the bandit chief called over one of his trusted subordinates and whispered, "Scar, hurry down the walls and find 20-some reliable brothers. Prepare horses and rations, then go to the warehouse and take out gold, silver, and jewels. Rush to the back gate and be on standby. As soon as something goes wrong, we'll immediately retreat." Scar was startled. He asked in a low voice, "Big brother, if we defend the pass, will we be unable to defend it?" The bandit chief glared at him and snapped, "What do you know? I took a cursory glance just now. The enemy actually has scaling ladders and ballistae. It's clear that they came prepared. Whether we could defend it or not is still unknown. At this time, we naturally have to prepare a path of retreat. It's better to be prepared." Scar's heart trembled. "Big brother, I understand. Go." The bandit chief waved his hand. After Scar left, the bandit chief regained his composure and stood on the walls. As the bandit chief was preparing a path of retreat, a small incident occurred in the courtyard where Leonbai and his daughter were being held. A young bandit stealthily rushed to the courtyard with a food box in his hand. Two of the bandit chief's trusted subordinates were standing guard outside the courtyard. When they saw the young bandit, they immediately shouted, "What are you doing? Don't you know that this is a forbidden area?" The young bandit looked left and right. When he saw that there was no one around, he quietly walked to the guard's side and whispered, "Brother, did you hear? The lord that the old stronghold master contacted is leading troops to attack the Southern Guard Pass." The guard was a bit impatient. "Who doesn't know that? There's no need for you to tell me. Tell me the truth. Just what are you doing here?" The young bandit wasn't angry. He continued to speak in a low voice. "Hey, brother, you don't know how angry the boss is. He wanted to personally come and kill the old master, but unfortunately, he was stopped by his brothers. The boss couldn't refuse his brothers, so he reluctantly agreed to let the old master go. In reality, he was still indignant. Thus, the boss secretly arranged for me to send the father and daughter on their way." The young bandit pointed at the food container in his hand. Without saying anything, he made a throat-slitting gesture. The guard's heart trembled. With their understanding of the bandit chief, this sort of thing was truly possible. He immediately believed most of the young bandit's words. He nodded and said, "Since that's the case, I'll accompany you in." "No, you absolutely cannot." The young bandit immediately shook his head and said in a low voice, "Think about it. This matter is so secretive. How can we make a big fuss about it? You two brothers should guard the door, as usual, so that no one will suspect anything. Otherwise, if this matter is exposed and the boss blames us, we won't be able to bear the consequences." Thinking of the boss's actions, the two guards felt a chill in their hearts. They gratefully said, "Brother, you're truly thoughtful. Quickly go in." Under the grateful gaze of the guards, the young bandit walked into the courtyard. This courtyard had originally been Li Feishue's residence. Both father and daughter had been placed under house arrest here. Lianbai's illness was already beyond cure. It was difficult for him to even get out of bed. Li Feishue had been attending to him the entire time, her face haggard. "Who is it?" The young bandit was discovered by Li Feishue as soon as he entered. The young girl reacted quickly. She grabbed the sword at the side and held it in front of her. When a young bandit entered the room and saw this scene, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. He lowered his voice and said, "Miss, there's no need to panic. I'm a spy from Milan County. I brought important information." Li Feishue was bewildered. Her father had already told her about Milan County. She also knew that there were spies from Milan County hidden in the Southern Guard Pass. However, she wasn't sure if the person in front of her was trustworthy. The young bandit saw through Li Feishue's doubts. He took out a token and handed it to Li Feishue. "This is my identity token. Miss, feel free to inspect it." Li Feishue took the token. It was very ordinary and didn't have any markings. There were only 3 crooked horizontal lines in one corner. Li Feishue calmed down and heaved a sigh of relief. She knew that the other party was indeed a spy from Milan County. Did something happen outside? Li Feixiue thought of the other party's intentions. The young bandit didn't dare to delay and said, "That's right. My lord and the Marquis of Lian Province have sent an army to attack the Southern Guard Pass. The army is outside the pass." Li Feixiue was overjoyed. She muttered to herself, "That's great. Father finally doesn't have to suffer anymore." The young bandit shook his head. He wasn't as naive as the other party. He said in a deep voice, "Miss, you don't know. The old master just escaped a calamity." The usurper was furious and wanted to attack the old master, but he was stopped and couldn't do anything. "I'm worried that if the situation isn't favorable, the other party will use you and your father to make a fuss. Then what should we do?" Li Feixiue was still young and didn't know what to do. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, the unconscious Li Anbai woke up. "Father, you're awake." Li Feixiue was overjoyed. She threw herself at the bed and was about to cry. The ambitious and ruthless man opened his turbid eyes and looked at his daughter lovingly. He wanted to reach out, but couldn't. Li Anbai strenuously turned his gaze to the young bandit and said with great effort, "I heard your conversation just now. I'm ashamed that I couldn't fulfill my promise. Your lord was benevolent and immediately sent troops to save us father and daughter. I can't thank you enough. The old master is too kind." The young bandit didn't dare to be negligent. He immediately asked, "Does the old master have a good plan for how to escape?" The young bandit was so nervous because he was worried that the bandits would use the father and daughter as hostages to threaten his lord. Given his lord's personality, it was possible that he would be soft-hearted. Thus, as a qualified spy, he would take the risk to meet the father and daughter. He had to eliminate any hidden dangers before they could sprout. To be continued. Chapter 244. A glint flashed in Li Anbai's cloudy eyes, as if he could see through the young bandit's heart with a glance. He said in a hoarse voice, "Young hero, you don't have to worry. This old man has lived in the Southern Guard Pass for nearly 10 years, so I know every grass and tree here like the back of my hand. There's a secret room in the courtyard where my daughter lives. It's enough to hide for a few days." The young bandit's heart trembled. He felt that his thoughts had been clearly seen through by the old man in front of him. Suppressing his discomfort, he forced a smile and said, "That's great. Old bandit master and miss, please move to the secret room." Li Anbai's eyes flashed, and he said, "Young hero, there's something I have to remind you of. Please speak." The young bandit didn't dare to be negligent. This old man has some understanding of the bandit's temperament. This person is scheming and cautious. He's known as a cunning rabbit. This time, he sees the opportunity to seize power. This old man is almost certain that the bandit will definitely prepare a path of retreat. The South Guard Pass is located in the canyon and can escape from the north and south. Once the situation goes awry, the bandit might abandon the pass and escape from the north. Otherwise, the person who understood you the most would often be your enemy. The young bandit's face paled. If the bandit leader abandoned the pass and he didn't notice, it would be a major dereliction of duty. "Thank you for the reminder, old bandit." Li Anbai blinked his eyes in response. He had his own selfish reasons for reminding the other party. If the bandit escaped, it would be a scourge to his daughter. After explaining everything, Li Anbai was seen fumbling at the head of the bed with great effort. With a kacha sound, the wall next to him suddenly opened, revealing a secret room. The secret room was only 4 or 5 square meters, with a bed and a chair. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Time was tight, so the young bandit didn't dare to delay. He and Li Feixiue moved Li Anbai to the bed in the secret room and brought in some rations. Li Feixiue followed them into the secret room under her father's signal. Not long after, the secret room closed once more. Nothing unusual could be seen from the outside. The young bandit was still worried, so he made some arrangement for the beds outside before carrying the empty food box out of the small courtyard. Before leaving, the young bandit reminded the guard once again that he was not allowed to enter and check, nor was he allowed to leave his post without permission in order to avoid arousing suspicion. The guard gratefully agreed. The young bandit had a lot on his mind as he thought about how to stop the other party from escaping. Outside Southern Guard Pass, the battle had already begun. The first to show their might were the 5 ballistae and the archer battalion. The dense rain of arrows drew arcs in the sky and covered the top of the city walls. The arrows fired by the ballistae were rapid and fast. Like a machine gun, the arrows were like bullets leaving a barrel, pouring out in a concentrated torrent, taking away the lives of bandits one after another. As long as the bandits dared to show themselves, they would be met with a fatal blow. "Cover! Cover us!" The bandit leader hid under a shield and shouted. Upon receiving the order, the bandit archers didn't dare to disobey. Trembling with fear, they walked out of the cover of their shields. Without even aiming, they directly shot. The arrows rained down from above like the blades of the Grim Reaper, descending at high speed. "Raise your shields," the commander shouted. With a schwa sound, one shield after another was erected. From above, it looked like the ground was covered with a layer of shields. The arrows hit the shields, producing ear-piercing pop sounds. Some unlucky ones didn't hold their shields firmly and were hit by the arrows, causing them to slide to the side, revealing an opening. The arrows that followed mercilessly pierced into the bodies of the soldiers, reaping a life. While both sides were attacking each other, 10 scaling ladders were slowly pushed to the edge of the city walls. Hiding inside the scaling ladders were the 1st Battalion of the Forbidden Brigade. At the same time, the ballistae changed their target and began to fire treading arrows at the city walls. Giant arrows shot through the gaps in the city walls, forming a dense forest of arrows. The treading arrows were the starting gun. The saber and shield soldiers at the back began to move toward the city walls against the rain of arrows. The scaling ladders stopped beside the city walls. With a paw sound, the folding auxiliary ladder was set up, and the hooks at the top of the ladder were firmly hooked to the edge of the city walls. The soldiers of the Forbidden Brigade walked out from the inside of the scaling ladders and began to climb up along the ladder. In order to increase their speed, the soldiers put tang sabers in their mouths and used their hands to climb. "Boss, the scaling ladders are up." The bandits panicked. "I'm not blind, I can see." The bandit leader roared in exasperation. "Charge up, push the scaling ladders away, and drop them to their deaths." The hooks of the scaling ladders were specially designed, and it was difficult to push them away without the proper method. The bandits who had risked their lives to rush out had not gone through city defense training at all. Looking at the death gods climbing up from below, they were all frightened. "Smash them with stones." The bandit leader realized his mistake and hurriedly adjusted his strategy. Yes, in order to survive, the bandits lifted the stones and threw them down. Unfortunately, it was too late. The soldiers of the Forbidden Brigade had almost climbed to the top of the city walls. The stones that fell down smashed the soldiers at the front off the scaling ladders, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The soldiers who caught up took the opportunity to quickly climb to the top. The soldiers held the tang sabers in their hands and stood on the scaling ladders, fighting with the bandits. The soldiers of the Forbidden Brigade were all soldiers who had gone through hundreds of battles, and the 1st Battalion was the elite of the elite. Every one of them was a 10th grade elite soldier, and their lethality was extremely astonishing. 10 scaling ladders, 10 flowers blossomed on all sides. The group, led by Wang Feng, was the first to climb the city walls. Wang Feng shook his spear and said coldly, "Wang Feng is here. Whoever is not afraid of death, come forward. Kill him." The bandit leader still did not personally go into battle. Kill. There were still villains among the bandits. They were not afraid of anything else, but they were afraid of being called cowards. Wang Feng's words and actions had undoubtedly provoked them. Wang Feng was not afraid at all. With a sweep of his spear, a large empty space appeared in front of him. In the Battle of the Evil Lion Ridge, Wang Feng had a breakthrough in battle, and his battle strength had become even more terrifying. His spear swept and stabbed, taking away the lives of bandits one after another. For a moment, no one could get close to him. Wang Feng was like a death god, firmly guarding the scaling ladders, not allowing the bandits to get close. Taking this opportunity, the soldiers of the Forbidden Brigade quickly followed and nimbly climbed up the city walls. Seeing their commander show his might, this group of battle maniacs brandished their tang sabers, disregarding the fact that they had the advantage in numbers, and directly charged into the group of bandits, fighting with them. The strength of the Forbidden Brigade caused the bandits to tremble in fear. If one path was broken, another path would be broken. The soldiers on the other scaling ladders also climbed up the city walls and fought with the bandits. Seeing that they were about to lose the defense, the bandit leader made up his mind and mobilized the bandits responsible for throwing stones to surround this group of lunatics. Unbeknownst to them, the saber and shield soldiers who were already waiting by the city walls were waiting for this opportunity. Under the leadership of their captain, they quickly climbed up the city walls using scaling ladders or climbing the treading arrows to support their allies. For a moment, the top of Southern Town Pass was filled with the sounds of killing, and blood flowed like a river. Seeing that the saber and shield soldiers had climbed up the city walls, Mu Ging, who was in charge of commanding, decisively ordered the Shanghai County Heavy Infantry Battalion to start attacking the city gates. Shi received the order and did not dare to delay. He roared, "Brothers, charge! Charge!" The barbarian soldiers raised their shields and piled up wooden blocks as they aggressively charged toward the city gates. Boom! The barbarian soldiers collided with the city gates, producing a deafening sound that shook the entire pass. "Hey!" The soldiers shouted as they pulled back the wooden blocks and repeatedly attacked the city gates. Although the wooden city gates were wrapped in iron, they creaked under the continuous attacks of the monsters. It looked like they were about to collapse. The barbarians were known for their great strength. The impact of the wooden blocks they pushed was more than 10,000 Jin. Bang! The first city gate was finally broken. The main city gate of Southern Town Pass had 3 city gates. After the outermost city gate was broken through, there was another city gate in the middle. Fortunately, at this time, the soldiers had the door to cover them, so they could attack without worry. "Hey! Hey! Hey!" A series of cries could be heard coming from inside the cave, followed by a series of earth-shattering rumbles, which made one's heart tremble with fear. On top of the city walls, the bandit leader heard the rumbles coming from below, and his heart tightened. Looking over, a large number of enemy soldiers had already rushed up the city walls. Although their numbers were only half of the bandits, they were not at a disadvantage. On the other hand, the bandits were scared out of their wits and were about to collapse. Sigh. The bandit leader sighed unwillingly and signaled his trusted subordinates to secretly retreat. At this time, the second city gate had been broken through. At this time, Shi, who had 2 choices in front of him. The first was to climb up the city walls through the passageway and assist the attacking troops. The second was to continue to break through the third city gate and cut off the enemy's retreat. Shi thought for a moment and already had an idea. He first sent someone to report the situation inside the door to the command center. Then, he left behind a platoon to continue to break through the last city gate. He led the remaining troops up the stairs to the top of the city walls to assist his brothers in the Imperial Guard Brigade. After receiving Shi's report, Mu Guiying frowned, not knowing what to choose. At this time, a signal flare rose from within Southern Town Pass. Mu Guiying was shocked. She knew that it was a signal flare from the spies in the pass, indicating that the situation was urgent. She did not hesitate anymore. Other than leaving behind a platoon of cavalry as a precaution, she sent out the remaining 4 platoons to pass through the door and cut off the enemy's retreat. Ouyang Shuo and Mu Lanyue stood at the side and did not say a word, allowing Mu Qing to command them. The cavalry originally thought that this battle had nothing to do with them. After receiving the order, all of them were fired up. Without another word, they charged out of their positions and went straight for the city gates. At this time, the city walls were already in chaos. The mountain bandit archers could no longer shoot arrows outside with peace of mind and were drawn into the chaotic battle. Thus, the cavalry smoothly rushed to the city gates. In just this one round, the third city gate had been broken through. The cavalry gave the mountain barbarian warriors a thumbs up and led his subordinates through the city gates, going around to the north of Southern Town Pass to intercept the enemy. To be continued. Chapter 245. On the walls of the Southern Guard Pass, whose reinforcements had completely reversed the situation. Now that Wang Feng was free, he looked around and noticed that the bandit leader who had given the order had already disappeared. He shouted, "Your leader has already escaped. Hurry up and surrender." The will of the bandits to resist was much weaker than that of the regular army. The casualties hadn't even exceeded 1/10, but they were already on the verge of collapse. Wang Feng's shout was the last straw that broke the camel's back. When the bandits turned around and saw that their leader had indeed slipped away, they couldn't help but cry out. Some of the more cowardly ones surrendered like gangsters. Some of the evildoers ran for their lives. "Chase!" Wang Feng ordered. Yes, the soldiers received the order and chased in all directions. Immediately, the Southern Guard Pass was in chaos. Wang Feng's actions were truly Ouyang Shua's teachings. In the midst of the chaos, the bandit leader brought more than 20 of his trusted subordinates and tried to escape with the money. Before leaving, he didn't change his lustful mind and wanted to take the little beauty, Li Feishue, with him. The bandit leader came to the courtyard and saw that the guards were still there, so he was about to enter. The guard were baffled. Hadn't the old leader already ordered to be killed? What was he doing here? The bandit leader walked into the courtyard and found that there wasn't even a shadow. He couldn't help but become angry and yelled at the guards outside. "Where are they? Where did they go?" Only then did the guard realize that something was wrong. He hurriedly ran into the small courtyard and stammered, "Boss, not long ago, there was a man who said that he came to kill the old stronghold master with poison under your orders. He didn't allow us to come in." The bandit leader immediately realized that he had fallen into a trap. He angrily kicked the guard and cursed, "Trash!" Time was of the essence, and the bandit leader had no other choice. He glared at the courtyard and hurriedly fled. Compared to beauties, his life was more important. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't grant his wish. The bandit leader's group hadn't run far before the cavalry battalion caught up. The eyes of the battalion commander lit up, knowing that he had caught a big fish. He yelled, "Capture them!" Yes, the soldiers on horseback surrounded the bandit leader's group with a murderous aura. When the bandit leader saw this, he sighed helplessly and allowed himself to be captured. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the Southern Guard Pass regained its peace. Ouyang Shua didn't interfere with matters such as sealing the treasury, taking inventory of the resources, and taking in the captives. Mu Lanyue and Mu Guiying were completely in charge. He had already stated that Shanghai County would only be assisting and would not participate in the distribution of the spoils of war. Ouyang Shua didn't even plan to take back the scaling ladders and the ballistae. He gave them all to Mu Lanyue. 5 ballistae would be placed at the Southern Guard Pass to strengthen its defenses. According to Mu Guiying's plan, the Southern Pass would station a battalion of soldiers. Although there weren't many of them, given Milan County's size, it was already quite a feat according to Ouyang Shua's request. The troops of Shanghai County had withdrawn from the Southern Town Pass and assembled outside the pass. The 1st Battalion of the Praetorian Guard Brigade had lost 75 men in this battle, mainly due to being hit by stones during the siege of the city. The 1st Battalion of the Praetorian Guard Brigade had only lost 5 men because they did not participate in the intense battle. Ouyang Shu ordered the corpses of the fallen soldiers to be brought back to the Shanghai County Cemetery for burial. "Big Brother Wui, let's enter the pass together." Mu Lanyue ran over with a smile. Ouyang Shua was startled. He didn't plan to enter the pass and was preparing to return to Shanghai County immediately. He said, "Yu, is there something wrong?" Although Mu Lanyue was still a little girl, after half a year of training of the Lord, her mind was already extremely mature. She wouldn't call Ouyang Shua for no reason. "Big Brother Wui, come with me." The black-bellied girl didn't explain. She directly pulled Ouyang Shua's clothes and walked into the pass. Ouyang Shua smiled bitterly and followed behind her. Southern Town Pass, Meeting Hall. There were more than a dozen boxes placed in the hall. Lian Bai and his daughter were also present. However, Lian Bai's complexion didn't look too good. He looked like he could die at any moment. Li Feishue accompanied him, silently crying. Mu Lanyue pulled Ouyang Shua and invited him to sit with her at the head of the meeting hall. Mu Guiying sat below and cupped her fists. Reporting to my lord, we captured a total of 2,140 people in this battle. We also seized a large amount of rations, supplies, and weapons. The most important reward is the 12 boxes of gold, silver, and jewelry in the hall. This general has calculated that there are a total of 2 boxes of gold, 8 boxes of silver, and 2 boxes of jewelry. The warehouses of the southern town pass were extremely rich in supplies. There were basic supplies such as rations, fodder, oil, wood, and other defensive supplies. There were also bows, swords, armor, and other military supplies. In addition, there were all kinds of gold, silver, and jewelry. Some of these treasures were already in the southern town pass. Some were brought over from the stronghold by Li Anbai, and some were looted by the bandits from passing merchants. Mu Lanyue had pulled Ouyang Shuo over mainly to discuss how to distribute these 12 boxes of treasures. She was well aware that the Shanghai County's elite troops had contributed greatly to the successful capture of the southern town pass. Although Ouyang Shuo had already stated that he would give up on distributing the spoils of war, Mu Lanyue still couldn't do something like keeping the spoils for herself. On this matter, Mu Guiying was also extremely supportive. Ouyang Shuo also didn't expect that the treasures in the southern town pass would be even more than the evil Lion Ridge's bandit stronghold. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't tempted at all. However, in Ouyang Shuo's eyes, these funds were just icing on the cake. But for the rapidly developing Mulan County, it was like sending charcoal in snowy weather. Big Brother Wooey, the gold and jewelry are all yours. How about it? Although Mu Lanyue's distribution plan seemed exaggerated, it was actually fair. The value of the captives and the various supplies was no less than 2 boxes of gold, especially the various weapons and equipment. Ouyang Shuo shook his head firmly. He looked at Mu Lanyue dotingly and said resolutely, Yu, there's no need to do this. How about this? I'll take 1 box of gold and leave the rest to you. Seeing that Mu Lanyue was about to say something, Ouyang Shuo raised his hand to stop her. It's settled. All right, thank you, Big Brother Wooey. Mu Lanyue's eyes turned, and she agreed with a smile. After the distribution was done, Ouyang Shuo got up and was about to leave. Cough, cough. Li Anbai suddenly coughed to remind them of his existence. Old Bandit Master, is there anything else? Mu Guiying asked. Li Anbai nodded with great effort and said in a hoarse voice, This old man doesn't have long to live. The only thing I'm worried about is my daughter. I hope that General and Sirs can fulfill my wish. Mu Guiying turned to look at Mu Lanyue, indicating that she would make the decision. Mu Lanyue said in a crisp voice, What's so difficult about that? Little sister Feishue is so innocent and cute. In the future, she won't suffer in Mulan County. Old Bandit Master, please don't worry. Ouyang Shuo laughed and shook his head. He didn't think that Mu Lanyue would be like him, having a hobby of taking in little sisters. If that's the case, this old man thanks you. Hearing Mu Lanyue's promise, Li Anbai finally relaxed. After everything was settled, Ouyang Shuo bid farewell and left. Before leaving, Mu Lanyue suddenly stuffed a token into Ouyang Shuo's hand. What is this? Ouyang Shuo asked. Mu Lanyue smiled mysteriously. This was obtained by Big Sister Mu when she searched the secret room of the Southern Town Pass. Take a look. Ouyang Shuo looked at the token's attributes and was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. Fusion token, 3/3 after using. The village creation token of a territory can be fused with an existing town. There's no need to start from scratch. Without a doubt, the fusion token solved one of Ouyang Shuo's biggest problems. He could completely separate the village creation tokens from North Sea County, Pool Water County, or Friendship County and use the fusion token to fuse them with Tianfeng County and the other territories, restoring the growth potential of those territories. Yu, do you know the value of this token? Ouyang Shuo's tone was serious. If such a heaven-defying token were to be placed on the super auction platform, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Mu Lanyue didn't have any self-awareness. She giggled and said, I know. However, I believe that Big Brother Wui needs this token more than I do. Only you can maximize the value of this token. The news of Ouyang Shuo conquering the 5 territories was known to all members of the Mountain and Sea Alliance, and Mulan Yue was no exception. Ouyang Shuo nodded. He suddenly reached out and patted the little girl's head. He smiled and said, "All right, I'll accept the token." He didn't mention anything about repaying her, and just accepted it. The relationship between the two of them suddenly became close. All the barriers between them had been removed, and they were like real siblings. Mulan Yue smiled brightly like a summer flower, warming people's hearts. After returning to Shanghai County, Ouyang Shuo dismissed the troops and went back to his office alone. The fusion token could be used 3 times, which meant that he needed 3 village creation tokens. How to use them and which 3 tokens to use would affect Ouyang Shuo's overall planning for his future territories. Ouyang Shuo first thought of North Sea County. As a port city, it was not suitable to split its attention. Moreover, North Sea County was surrounded by a long and narrow coastline, so it was not suitable to develop other subsidiary territories. Therefore, North Sea County's 3 black iron village creation tokens could be completely freed up. Secondly, there was the problem of which subsidiary territory to fuse. Among the 5 subsidiary territories, Gushin County, as the Mountain Barbarian Autonomous County, could be excluded. It was not suitable to use the fusion token. Gushin County's target of attracting people was the Mountain Barbarian tribes in the forest. In the future, its population growth rate would not be lower than the other subsidiary territories, so there was no need for new refugees. As for the remaining 4 subsidiary territories, Tianfeng County definitely needed to use 1 token. The key question was whether or not Yishui County, Eternal Night Town, and Guangshui Town needed to use a precious village creation token. Ouyang Shuo didn't plan to use up 3 chances at once. He wanted to leave at least 1 token for the future Duanren County. Just because he didn't touch Ba Dao's Broken Blade Town now didn't mean that he wouldn't touch it in the future. As Ouyang Shuo's eastern central city, he naturally couldn't ignore its potential for growth. In the end, Ouyang Shuo decided to only fuse Tianfeng County and Yishui County for now. To be continued. Chapter 246. P.S. 500 monthly votes and updates. Thank you for your support. On the 12th day of the 10th month of the first year of Gaia, Ouyang Shuo arrived at Beihai County with his personal guards. It had been more than half a year since Beihai County was established, but this was Ouyang Shuo's first time here. The boat meandered along the canyon. Looking up, the cliff walls on both sides were steep. Apart from moss, there was nothing else. It was deathly silent and oppressive. Above the cliff, a skyline could be seen. The blue sky was faintly discernible. The rapid river slammed against the rock walls, making splashing sounds and splashing water. Suddenly, there was a sharp turn, and a skyline suddenly appeared in front of them. The boat passed through the skyline, and the view suddenly opened up. The sun was bright, and the sky was high and wide. The coastline in the distance was clearly visible, and the sound of crashing waves could be heard. A pair of seabirds flew across the sky, bringing with them a sense of vitality. Narrow and wide, life and death, but it was so abrupt and harmonious. Ouyang Shuo couldn't help but sigh at the power of nature and its supernatural workmanship. Beside the river, beside the sea, a majestic city stood between heaven and earth, suppressing all directions. Beihai County Magistrate Gu Xiuan and Beihai Fleet Commander Pei Donglai were waiting at the pier with a group of civil and military officials to welcome Ouyang Shuo. The boat slowly came to a stop, and Ouyang Shuo disembarked with his personal guards. "Greetings, Marquis." The group of officials bowed. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "All of you are my loyal subjects. Beihai County has grown to such a scale thanks to all of you. This Marquis didn't come here to show off his merits. Disperse." Yes, the officials didn't dare to be negligent and left, leaving only Gu Xiuan and Pei Donglai behind. Ouyang Shuo wasn't in a hurry to enter the city. He smiled and said to Gu Xiuan and Pei Donglai, "What do you think? Accompany me for a walk." In fact, Gu Xiaowen and Pei Donglai didn't know why Ouyang Shua was here. Last night, they received an urgent letter from his secretary, Lang Bai Nanpu, saying that the Marquis would come to Beihai County the next morning, but the details weren't mentioned. The two had no objections to Ouyang Shua's suggestion, and said in unison, yes. The three walked along the river towards the sea, with the personal guards following far behind. While walking, Ouyang Shua looked at Gu Xiaowen and asked, Xiaowen, what's the situation in Beihai County? Ever since capturing Tianfeng County and the other 4 territories, Ouyang Shua had already canceled the arrangement of the subordinate territories' commanding officers coming to the headquarters every month to report on their work. Instead, it was changed to once every 6 months. Thus, Ouyang Shua hadn't seen this capable general of his for a period of time. Gu Xiaowen was stunned. He bowed again and said, reporting to the Marquis. Hey! Ouyang Shua waved his hand. This isn't the imperial court. Xiaowen doesn't need to be so restrained. The reason why Ouyang Shua didn't rush to the county yamen was because he didn't want to be too formal. Gu Xiaowen nodded and began to pick out the important matters and report them to Ouyang Shua. At the military conference last month, Ouyang Shua proposed a major industrial development plan. After the meeting, the Secretary Office compiled Ouyang Shua's speech into an official document and distributed it to all the subordinate territories. The commanders of the subordinate territories understood tacitly and began to think about the unique industrial planning of their territories. In this regard, Beihai County was at a disadvantage. As the saying goes, rely on the water to draw water from the water. Beihai County, apart from the fishing industry and salt industry, was almost unable to develop any other industries. Needless to say, the salt industry had reached a bottleneck due to the limited size of the beach. The fishing industry wasn't optimistic either. Not only were the fishermen afraid of encountering bad weather, but they were also afraid of encountering pirates. It wasn't safe, and they could only fish in the waters where the North Sea Fleet was patrolling. It was estimated that Beihai County would only be promoted to a third-class county in half a month. On the other hand, the Pool Water County caught up and successfully promoted to a third-class county last week. Although the migration of the mountain barbarians was a factor, Gu Xiaowen was still unconvinced. As the first subordinate territory of the Shanghai Territory, Gu Xiaowen had always regarded Beihai County as the benchmark of the subordinate territories. In order to surpass the Pool Water County, Gu Xiaowen had recently discussed with Pei Donglai to start the military operation to eliminate the pirates as soon as possible to increase the population of Beihai County. At the same time, it was also to clear the obstacles for the fishermen to go out to sea to fish. Pei Donglai had this intention long ago, and both of them hit it off immediately. Unknowingly, the black shark pirates retreated after running into a wall. Recently, they didn't send any scouting ships to monitor the movements of Beihai County for a long period of time. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Gu Xiaowen and Pei Donglai sent an invitation to Ouyang Shua, hoping to approve the military operation of the North Sea Fleet as soon as possible. Ouyang Shua laughed and shook his head when he heard that both of them were still talking about eliminating the pirates. You guys don't have to put on a show in front of me. Due to the recent war on the mainland, the elimination of the pirates was indeed effected. As the evil Lion Ridge and the Southern Guard Pass were taken down, the war on the mainland came to an end. I'm here today to discuss with you about the elimination of the black shark pirates on the Moon Island. Both of them were overjoyed. As they spoke, they arrived at the beach. The seawater was unusually clear, and there was no trash on the beach. In reality, it was rare to see such a clean beach. Ouyang Shua even had the urge to jump into the sea. He was thinking that he could bring Binger to the beach to play when he had the time in the future. Xiaowen, Ouyang Shua called out. Yes, help me do one thing. Build a wooden hut near the beach. When I have time in the future, I'll bring Binger here for a vacation. It'll be nice to have a place to stay, Ouyang Shua instructed. Although he was a lord, Ouyang Shua didn't want to be tied down by military affairs. He had to rest when he needed to and enjoy when he needed to. Yes, Gu Xiaowen solemnly replied. He had already made up his mind to build the wooden house beautifully and ensure that the Marquis and the third young miss would have a comfortable living environment. Let's go back to the government office. Ouyang Shuo was ready to go back home. North Sea Government Office, meeting room. Ouyang Shuo silently chanted the name of the stone tablet, and the white stone tablet slowly rose from the floor of the meeting room. On the front of the stone tablet, the words North Sea County shone brightly. He placed his right hand on the front of the stone tablet and silently said Subsidiary Village. A system notification immediately sounded. System notification. North Sea County is a Tier 2 county and has 3 subsidiary village slots. Do you want to use them? Yes. System notification. North Sea County's village creation token is a silver grade token. The subsidiary village's village creation token will be lowered by 1 rank and will become an iron grade token. Do you want to separate them? Separate. 3 rays of black light shot out from the stone tablet and slowly landed on Ouyang Shuo's hand, turning into 3 iron grade village creation tokens. Ouyang Shuo took the opportunity to look at the properties of the village creation tokens. Name, village creation token, iron grade. Properties, attraction rate of refugees increased by 25, attraction rate of special talents increased by 10, production rate increased by 25, skill proficiency increased by 10, soldier level increased by 10. Evaluation, unique item, cannot be dropped, cannot be traded. A black iron grade village creation token only had half of a gold grade village creation token's properties, which was much lower in grade. Ouyang Shuo didn't mind. He put the 3 village creation tokens into his storage bag. It was better than nothing. Does the Marquis want to establish a subsidiary village? Gu Xiuan asked. Only then did Ouyang Shuo remember that he hadn't explained the fusion token to Gu Xiuan. He felt a little embarrassed. He still remembered that Gu Xiuan had asked for permission to establish a subsidiary village in North Sea County twice, but Ouyang Shuo had rejected both times. Xiuan, there's something I need to tell you. Ouyang Shuo paused for a moment, then continued. North Sea County needs to focus on developing its headquarters. That way, there's no need to establish a subsidiary village. I have other uses for these 3 village creation tokens. Gu Xiuan's face instantly paled. He thought that Ouyang Shuo was dissatisfied with North Sea County's development. Your humble servant is afraid. I have failed the Marquis's trust. Please punish me. Gu Xiuan half knelt on the ground in fear and trepidation. Ouyang Shuo shook his head. This was the bad thing about being a scholar. He had too many thoughts and liked to blindly guess things. If it was Zhao Dexin or Zhao Duong, they definitely wouldn't have done this. They would have directly asked for the reason. Stand up. Don't misunderstand. The Marquis's arrangement isn't because I'm dissatisfied with you, but because it's based on the overall planning of the territory. North Sea County is close to the sea, so it needs to be developed. This is the right way to go. Ouyang Shuo had no choice but to explain. He didn't want to leave any grudges in his heart. Yes. Gu Xiuan's face softened as he heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Xiuan couldn't be blamed for being so nervous. Recently, seeing North Sea County being overtaken by Pool Water County, Gu Xiuan, who had always been competitive, had a knot in his heart. He realized that even now, he was still jittery. Ouyang Shuo also realized that Gu Xiuan's mental state was a little out of balance. It was difficult for an outsider to console him. The more he consoled, the deeper the knot in his heart would become. He could only rely on himself to adjust. As the leader, Ouyang Shuo naturally couldn't be biased towards any side. Whether it was Pool Water County, North Sea County, or even Friendship County, they were all meat. It would be a good thing if any of them developed well. If the competition between subsidiary villages could be controlled, it would be a good thing. Ouyang Shuo wouldn't interfere. Of course, if any of the leaders of subsidiary villages were to overstep their boundaries and do something out of line, Ouyang Shuo wouldn't be lenient and would definitely punish them severely. As the number of subsidiary villages increased and the strength of the subsidiary villages continued to grow, balancing the allocation of resources and human resources between each village was a profound art. The reason why Ouyang Shuo was in a hurry to build the Sky-Sea Road was to strengthen the centralization of power and strengthen the control of the base camp over the subsidiary villages. In this aspect, Ouyang Shuo was still young and inexperienced. He could only take it one step at a time. In fact, Ouyang Shuo lacked a teacher to teach him the way of an emperor. Fan Zhongyin and Tian Wenjing were lacking in this aspect and weren't good enough to be his teacher. To be continued. Chapter 247. After leaving the county office, Ouyang Shuo was led by Pei Donglai to Beihai Harbor for a tour. Beihai Harbor was located in the southeast corner of Beihai County. It was a comprehensive harbor with half a fishing port and the other half a military port. The high-grade shipyard that had been moved here was built in this harbor. After entering the station, Ouyang Shuo asked Pei Donglai to invite elder son and director Zheng Dehai to discuss the development of the Beihai fleet. In the meeting hall of the station, Ouyang Shuo sat on the seat of honor and looked around. A long time ago, this marquis decided to develop the navy and dominate the sea. It has been more than half a year since then. During this time, the territory has built a high-grade shipyard in Beihai Harbor. The Beihai fleet also has its main warship, the Mengchong fighting ship. But in reality, why do we have so many misgivings just to attack a small island and capture a group of pirates? Ouyang Shuo's question was very sharp, and the atmosphere became somewhat stagnant. General Pei, you're the commander of the Navy. Tell me. Ouyang Shuo began to call out names. Pei Donglai knew that he had to say something. He slowly got up and bowed to Ouyang Shuo. Reporting to the marquis, if you want to analyze the reason, I can naturally come up with a lot of excuses. For example, the lack of soldiers, the lack of combat experience, and the lack of familiarity with the surrounding waters. However, these aren't the main reasons. All the officers and soldiers of the Beihai fleet can overcome them. The most important problem is that the territory's warships are too few and can't organize a large-scale naval battle. Pei Donglai's point of view made Ouyang Shuo's eyes light up. Continue. As a former naval commander in the Imperial Army, Pei Donglai had rich experience in naval battles and was well aware of the Beihai fleet's problems. Pei Donglai sorted out his thoughts and continued. To build a well-organized naval fleet, we need at least 3 types of warships. First, the command ship, the fortress ship. It's the main warship and also the main logistical warship to support the fleet's long-range voyages. Second, the mid-sized warship, the Mengchong fighting ship, is an attack-type warship. As a warship whose defensive capability is second only to the fortress ship, the Mengchong fighting ship's weakness is that it can't conduct long-range naval battles alone because it can only carry supplies such as fresh water, rations, and arrows. Finally, there is the small battleship used for scouting and patrolling, the Scarlet Horse boat. It is small and light, and its speed is as fast as a horse, making it easy to hide. Only with a reasonable combination of the 3 types of warships can we maximize our combat potential. The organization of the fleet was not based on the army, but on the fleet. Apart from soldiers, the fleet also needed to be equipped with sailors. Currently, the North Sea Fleet only has 1 type of warship, the Mengchong battleship. If we want to cross the sea and attack Moon Island, we will have to take a huge risk. Ouyang Shuo nodded. He understood the crux of the problem. He had thought too simply. Among the 3 types of warships, small warships were the easiest to deal with. The key was the large warships, the fortress ships. In order to build a fortress ship, he had to overcome 2 obstacles. One was to obtain the fortress shipbuilding technical manual, and the other was to build a special shipyard. The current advanced shipyards could only build medium-sized warships. Zheng Dehai had already broken through to the master shipbuilder rank and had completely swept away the obstacles in building a special-class shipyard. Ouyang Shuo only needed to spend 5,000 gold coins to purchase a special-class shipyard blueprint. The key was the tower ship construction technique manual. This kind of special item could only be found by chance. Ouyang Shuo could only place his hopes on the annual auction. In the end, distant water could not quench present thirst. Ouyang Shuo raised his head to look at Zheng Dehai and asked, Is there anything to report about the shipyard? Zhang Dehai immediately stood up and bowed. Reporting to the Marquis, the shipyard has stopped building Mengchong battleships except for fishing boats. Why? Because the Mengchong battleships are completely full. Other than the North Sea Fleet and the Westlaw Lake Navy camp, there are still 20 Mengchong battleships idling. They're almost full. Ouyang Shuo was startled. Since when did the shipyard become so efficient? It cannot be underestimated. He asked, how many shipbuilders are there in the shipyard? A trace of pride flashed across Zhang Dehai's face. He smiled and said, reporting to the Marquis, after half a year of nurturing, the shipyard currently has 1 master shipbuilder, 12 advanced shipbuilders, 54 intermediate shipbuilders, 228 beginner shipbuilders, and 575 apprentices. That's a total of 870 people. Such a large team was indeed not easy. Not bad. Ouyang Shuo nodded in praise. Finally, Ouyang Shuo looked at Elder Sun and asked, Elder Sun, is there any progress on the modification of the ancient battleships? Elder Sun spent the rest of his time in the shipyard apart from participating in the research and development of the 7th Research Institute. Sun Xiaoye even complained to Ouyang Shuo that he was squeezing out her grandfather's remaining value. Ouyang Shuo could only smile bitterly in response. In fact, after entering the game, these old men's energy was no longer limited by their desires and reality. Each of them was full of energy and drive. Even if Ouyang Shuo wanted to stop them, he couldn't. Elder Sun's face was flushed and full of energy. He shook his head and said, as General Pei said, there are too few types of battleships. Many of the modifications are useless. We can only modify some of the details. For the Mengchong battleships, apart from the compass, the sails have also been upgraded. At the same time, this old man plans to install iron plates on the cabin walls and an iron ram on the bow to increase the Mengchong battleship's impact and destructive power. The most important research is the watertight bulkhead technology to increase the battleship's draft. Otherwise, with so many iron parts installed, it'll be useless if the draft can't keep up. Ouyang Shuo was overjoyed. He didn't expect Elder Sun to make so many modifications in such a short time. Elder Sun is too modest. Such modifications are worth tens of thousands of gold coins, Ouyang Shuo said with a smile. Elder Sun waved his hand. Ouyang, don't flatter this old man. Ouyang Shuo nodded and looked at everyone present, especially Pei Donglai. He said, this Marquis will be in charge of the ship. There are too many variables in this matter. I don't think we can make it in time for the battle on Moon Island, so we can only use the Mengchong battleships to resolve the battle. This Marquis will personally participate in this battle and try to solve the fleet's logistical problems. General Pei, you must also plan carefully and strive to fight a beautiful battle of annihilation at sea. Understood, Pei Donglai answered, feeling deeply responsible. That afternoon, Ouyang Shuo returned to Shanghai County. As soon as he returned, a servant reporting to Marquis, an important guest has come to the mansion. Madam has ordered that if Marquis returns, please go to the back garden. The madam mentioned by the servant was naturally Song Jia. Ouyang Shuo was startled. Since Song Jia came to receive them, they must be classmates who came because of its reputation. Since the establishment of the Eastern Fen sword faction, many classmates had come because of its reputation. Especially after Song Jia's identity was exposed in the forum, people came to seek shelter in an endless stream. Ouyang Shuo didn't show up for most of the people who came, and Song Jia was the one who received them. Since Song Jia asked them to meet them, they must be junior high school classmates, and they must have a good relationship. Ouyang Shuo walked into the back garden and saw Zisu, asking, what guests have come to the mansion? Zisu bowed and said, reporting to Marquis, I heard from Madam that they are Marquis' classmates, and they are 2 women. Ouyang Shuo nodded and waved his hand. This Marquis understands. You can go about your business. Understood. Zisu said goodbye and left. Ouyang Shuo passed through the back hall and came to the back garden. From afar, he heard the women talking and laughing. Will we hear? Song Jia's eyes were sharp, and she was the first to notice Ouyang Shua. 3 women were sitting in the garden pavilion. Besides Song Jia, there were 2 others dressed like swordsmen. Hearing Song Jia's shout, the 2 women next to her turned to look at Ouyang Shua. Wow, it's really Ouyang Shua. One of the slightly chubby women was bold and unrestrained. The other woman was petite and exquisite. Although she didn't say anything, the surprise in her eyes couldn't be concealed. Ouyang Shua was originally a little uncertain, but now he completely recognized the identity of the 2 women. As he walked, he smiled and said, "I was wondering who it was. So it's you 2 beauties. Welcome." Yes, they were Tan Xiaoli and Meng Feifei, who were acquainted with Ouyang Shua at the class reunion. The 2 women obviously hadn't recovered from their shock, and they didn't dare to believe it. Ouyang Shua shook his head helplessly and sat down next to Song Jia. Song Jia obediently poured a cup of tea for him and asked, "Wooey, did your trip go smoothly?" Song Jia knew that Ouyang Shua went to Beihai County in the morning for an inspection. Ouyang Shua nodded and didn't want to talk about it. He looked up at Tan Xiaoli and Meng Feifei, who were staring at him, and said self-mockingly, "What? Am I a monster? Why are you looking at me like that? Aren't you a monster?" Song Jia teased. Tan Xiaoli and Meng Feifei nodded in unison, expressing their agreement. "Old classmate, I really didn't expect to meet you here." Ouyang Shua also felt a little emotional. Tan Xiaoli and Meng Feifei were the ones who were emotional. Before coming to Shanghai County, they didn't know Ouyang Shua's identity, and they only came to Song Jia to seek shelter. After they arrived, Song Jia pointed out Ouyang Shua's identity, and they couldn't believe it for a moment. "Not bad. You secretly abducted our class belle." Tan Xiaoli was more cheerful, and she was the first to come back to her senses. She said teasingly, "We were still wondering who this Wooey is to be able to capture our class belle's heart. I didn't expect this person to be hiding among us." Ouyang Shua shook his head. The friendship between classmates wasn't as simple as Tan Xiaoli made it out to be. How much of Tan Xiaoli's words were sincere, and how much of it was secretly flattering Song Jia? No one knew. Ouyang Shua was also a layman, so he put down his thoughts and chatted with everyone. To be continued. Chapter 248. Tan Xiaoli and Meng Feifei's arrival only caused a small splash in Ouyang Shua's life, before everything returned to normal. With Ouyang Shua's current status, he naturally didn't need to pretend to socialize with others. He acted according to his heart, and every word and action was clear, without too much scheming or hypocrisy. After the establishment of the Eastern Fence Sword faction, Song Jia was fully in charge, and Ouyang Shua didn't participate. He believed that Song Jia had the ability to deal with all kinds of bad people. The next day, Yingyu's cousin Chui Shoren sent Ouyang Shua a gift. It turned out that the Chui Merchant Association had made a huge profit from the food crisis, according to Ouyang Shua's judgment. The Chui Merchant Association was naturally grateful for Ouyang Shua's guidance, and was thinking of how to repay him. Directly sending gold and silver was too vulgar. They spent a lot of effort to prepare a special gift for Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua opened the package, and it was a book. After looking at it, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. Manual of Cultured Pearls. After use, you will automatically grasp the technique of cultured pearls. According to research, the ancient cultured pearls in China already had some scale as early as the Song dynasty. At the end of the Ming dynasty and the beginning of the Qing dynasty, the cultured pearls had matured and had a certain economic value. The raw materials used for cultured pearls were mainly cheichu or normal clam shells. The process was simple, and the culturing period was shortened to within a year or even just a few months. Ouyang Shua was thinking about how to develop Sheila Lake, and the Manual of Cultured Pearls was the right time. If they could cultivate pearls on a large scale in Sheila Lake, it would be a high-quality industry. Ouyang Shua called Yingyu over and told her about the matter of cultivating pearls. According to Ouyang Shua's intentions, cultivating pearls would be directly under the jurisdiction of the finance department, and Tianfeng County would be responsible for the implementation. Ouyang Shuo then allocated 1,000 gold coins from his funds to support the pearl cultivation industry in Shilo Lake. And he was also happy after hearing this. After the discussion, Ouyang Shuo called his secretary Lang by Nanpu and gave him a black iron village creation token, manual of cultured pearls, and 1,000 gold coins. He told him to send these things to Tianfeng County through official channels, and Tianfeng County Magistrate Zhao Duong would be responsible for the arrangements. The village creation token that Ouyang Shuo gave to Bai Nanpu had been activated by the fusion token, so it could be used directly. There was no need for Ouyang Shuo to make a trip himself. After activating the 3 village creation tokens, the fusion token turned into a white light and disappeared. Along with these items, there was also a handwritten letter from Ouyang Shuo. In the letter, Ouyang Shuo explained everything. At the same time, he also told Zhao Duong that after the activation of Tianfeng County, the refugees should be arranged to work in the pearl farming industry as much as possible and strive to cultivate the pearl farming industry into the core industry of Tianfeng County. Apart from this, Ouyang Shuo did not forget to send a village creation token to Yishui County to activate it. Yingyu's cousin, Cui Shaoxi, had already taken up his post. He believed that he would be able to make good use of this token. As for the final village creation medallion, Ouyang Shuo left it in his spatial bag. After everything was settled, Ouyang Shuo sent 5,000 gold coins to his aunt through the courier station and asked her to help him purchase a special shipyard blueprint. In the letter, Ouyang Shuo also mentioned something else. He asked his aunt to take the lead and help him contact the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group to seek cooperation between both parties. Although the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group was not one of the top 10 guilds in the China server, it was very famous. This was because its previous incarnation was a group of international mercenaries in the real world. Right now, the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group was not very famous, and only a few people knew about their background. In his previous life, Ouyang Shuo had a certain understanding of them. The cooperation that Ouyang Shuo mentioned was actually to hire members of the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group as instructors to help the Shanghai County Military Trained Scouts and Special Forces. For this matter, Ouyang Shuo could not cooperate with the Wolf Warriors, who had a military background, so he could only find mercenaries. Ouyang Shuo asked his aunt to act as a middleman because both of them were adventure-type guilds, so it would be easier to communicate with them. If he directly made an appearance, it would seem a little abrupt. Janya, Snow-Fallen Rose Mercenary Group, S-Base. When Lin Jing received Ouyang Shuo's letter, she frowned and muttered to herself, "Why is this brat looking for Rattlesnake Mercenary Group? How did he know about such a mercenary group?" "Jingjing, what are you mumbling about?" Xie Yun asked. Lin Jing raised her head and said awkwardly, "Xiyun, do you have any contact with Rattlesnake Mercenary Group?" "Rattlesnake?" Xie Yun frowned. "As far as I know, their base is in Jianya. I met their leader, the Black Mamba Snake, once before. That was during a guild leaders gathering of the guild leaders. I heard that this mercenary group is very low-key. Why are you asking about this?" "Shuo wants us to act as a middleman to contact the Black Mamba Snake. He seems to have some business to cooperate with Rattlesnake, but he didn't say the specifics," Lin Jing explained. "Cooperation?" Xie lowered her head and carefully recalled. Slowly, she said, "From the clues, the members of Rattlesnake should be a fixed group in real life. They don't recruit from the outside, and the number of members is around 500 to 600. It's not even the size of a medium-sized guild." As the leader of Jianye's Overlord Guild, Xie Yun could be said to be very familiar with all the big and small guilds in Jianye City. However, she knew very little about the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group. Xie Yun shook her head and decided not to think about it. She smiled bitterly and said, "This nephew of yours is really mysterious. He's thousands of miles away, but he's actually so familiar with a mercenary group in Jianye City. Since he mentioned it, there must be a deeper meaning. How about this? I'll help you contact the Black Mamba Snake and see what his attitude is." Okay. Although Lin Jing ridiculed Ouyang Shuo, she was still very attentive to his instructions. The Rattlesnake Mercenary Group, S-Base was chosen in a very inconspicuous courtyard in Jianya City. If it wasn't for Snow Fallen Rose, as omnipresent influence in Jianya City, they might not have been able to find it. CSE Yoon and Lin Jing decided to personally pay a visit. "Who are you?" The guard at the door was very vigilant. This kind of occasion was usually handled by CSE Yoon. She smiled and said, "We are Snow Fallen Rose. We would like to pay a visit to your leader. Please inform him." There were very few adventure-type players in Jianya City who didn't know the name of Snow Fallen Rose. The guard naturally wasn't ignorant. He was shocked, but he didn't show it on his face. He expressionlessly said, "Please." CSE Yoon and Lin Jing looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. The quality of the Rattlesnake mercenary group was a little too high. Even a guard had such composure. They really hid their strength well. CSE Yoon's heart trembled. There was such a mercenary group hidden in Jianya City, and she actually didn't know about it. It was really a dereliction of duty. It seemed like she had to reevaluate the Rattlesnake mercenary group. The reason why Ouyang Shuo wanted to use Lin Jing as a middleman was not only to ensure smooth communication between adventure-type players, but also to indirectly remind them that the Rattlesnake mercenary group wasn't simple. As a mercenary group, the main business of the Rattlesnake mercenary group was to carry out kidnappings, assassinations, and other activities. It was extremely dangerous. The guard led the two to the guest room and said, "Please wait for a moment. I'll go and inform the leader." CSE nodded and said politely, "Thank you." Not long after, a burst of hearty laughter came from outside the guest room. The person hadn't arrived yet, but the sound could already be heard. "Haha, our esteemed guests have arrived. Apologies for not going out to meet you." The voice was unusually bright and sunny. As they spoke, a middle-aged man walked into the reception room. This person had dark skin and a muscular body. He was tall and sturdy, and his face was resolute. His face looked as if it had been carved by a knife. He had a buzz cut, and he exuded a masculine aura. CSE Yoon and Lin Jing stood up. They were astonished. The image of a black mamba didn't match the meaning of its name at all. It was very strange. "Sorry to disturb you," CSE Yoon said. The black mamba nodded and sat on the seat of honor. He said with a smile, "It's my honor to invite the two giants of the Snow Rose to come together." In fact, the Black Mamba was also very surprised by their visit. After the two sides exchanged greetings, Sisian decided not to beat around the bush. She said, "I'm here to visit your group and get to know you better. More importantly, I've been entrusted by someone." The Black Mamba's eyes narrowed, and his momentum changed again. It was so oppressive that they couldn't breathe. He didn't expect that he would still attract the attention of others, even though he was so low-key. "May I know who entrusted you with this?" the Black Mamba asked in a deep voice. Siesiyun was shocked, and her heart trembled. Fortunately, she was not an ordinary person. She said calmly, "The Lord of Shanghai County and the Marquis of Lian Province are not naked." What a great Buddha. No wonder the two of you came. The Black Mamba looked at the two women inquisitively. It seemed to want to understand a relationship between the Snow Rose and Shanghai County. Siesiyun ignored the other's inquisitive eyes and said concisely, "The Lord of Wui wants to cooperate with your group. What do you think?" "Cooperate? What cooperation?" the Black Mamba asked in surprise. He felt as if he was seen through by the Lord who was thousands of miles away and had never met before. This feeling was very uncomfortable. Siesiyun shook her head. "As for the specific content of the cooperation, you need to personally discuss it with the Lord of Wui. However, with the Lord of Wui's reputation, he won't speak without thinking." The Black Mamba's eyes narrowed again. Even if Siesiyun didn't say it, he was also prepared to meet the legendary Lord of China. He wouldn't feel at ease if he didn't figure out the other party's background. All right, the Rattlesnake opened its doors to do business. Naturally, there's no reason to shut business out. "President Shang, please tell the Marquis of Lian Province that I can visit Shanghai County at any time." The Black Mamba returned to his original demeanor as if he was a serious businessman. Siesiyun nodded and left with Lin Jing. To be continued. Chapter 249. On the 14th of October, Ouyang Shuo received the blueprints and a reply from his aunt, Lin Jing. Ouyang Shuo threw the blueprints to Bai Nanpu in the next room and asked him to send them to Beihai County. Then, he told Beihai County to start the shipyard's upgrade immediately. Ouyang Shuo returned to his office and opened the letter. In the letter, his aunt stated that she had contacted the leader of the rattlesnake mercenary group, Black Mamba. Black Mamba was very interested in his proposal and was willing to visit Shanghai County. Ouyang Shuo nodded. As expected, no one could ignore Shanghai County now. He immediately wrote a letter to Black Mamba, inviting him to Shanghai County the next day to discuss the cooperation. Since he still had time, Ouyang Shuo went to the military factory in the suburbs to retrieve a batch of military pellets to prepare for the upcoming battle on the Moon Island. In order to increase the odds of success, the shipyard was following Ouyang Shuo's request to upgrade the 25 battleships of the North Sea Fleet by installing iron plates and collision rams. The bigger secret weapon was the fierce fire oil. Ouyang Shuo wanted to see how the pirates' wooden battleships would deal with the fierce fire oil arrows. The next day, Black Mamba arrived on time. Ouyang Shuo received the mercenary leader in the side hall of the Marquis Mansion. Following the Black Mamba were two other people. According to the Black Mamba's introduction, they were Viper and Cobra. Ouyang Shuo knew that the members of the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group were the absolute core members of the group. On the Shanghai County side, only Gu Hongliang, the head of the military bureau, accompanied them. Marquis of Lian Province, why did you invite us here? Black Mamba went straight to the point. Ouyang Shuo knew that the other party had many doubts. If he didn't dispel their wariness, there would be no way to cooperate sincerely. He nodded and said, I know that your mercenary group is an international mercenary group in reality. This invitation is for you to return to your old profession. Black Mamba's eyes narrowed. His premonition had come true. In fact, being a mercenary wasn't a shameful profession. Especially after the interstellar migration, there was nothing to hide. What Black Mamba was surprised about was how the other party knew his background. Ouyang Shuo had made things clear because he did not want the two sides to be entangled in a dispute over their identities. The Black Mamba serpent was indeed an ambitious and ruthless person. After making things clear, he didn't try to conceal anything and frankly said, Marquis Lian Province truly deserves his reputation. I'm really curious about what kind of cooperation we can carry out now. It's actually very simple. Ouyang Shuo explained, I hope that your mercenary group can send a team of instructors to be stationed in Shanghai County. Help the military of Shanghai County train an elite special forces unit. How's that sound? Ouyang Shuo's idea was very simple. He wanted to transfer the concept of special operations from the modern army to the ancient cold weapon army. This was very difficult and a little whimsical. Non-professionals could not do it. Rattlesnake was a famous international mercenary group, and it was the elite among the elite mercenaries. Its combat strength and combat methods were comparable to ordinary special forces. The Black Mamba snake was really stunned. He couldn't help but be shocked by Ouyang Shuo's wild imagination. This was the advantage of being an outsider. Ouyang Shuo didn't know anything, so he dared to think. Of course, this was also closely related to Ouyang Shuo's precise understanding of the game. In Ouyang Shuo's mind, there was no such thing as a game. He interpreted the game as the real world. Ouyang Shuo didn't think that there was anything wrong with transferring modern knowledge to the ancient setting. He was a pragmatist through and through. The Black Mamba snake and the others had a fixed mindset. They thought that a game was a game and should be separated from reality. The setting of the game was ancient society, so it should be played according to the ancient model. Ouyang Shuo noticed that the eyes of the Viper, who was standing behind the Black Mamba snake, lit up. He seemed to be excited by Ouyang Shuo's wild idea. The members of the Rattlesnake Mercenary Group were all mercenaries. They didn't need special training in the game. Their way of thinking and action had subconsciously moved closer to the Special Operations Unit. Perhaps they didn't even realize it, because this way of thinking had already seeped into their bones and became instinctive. The topic proposed by Ouyang Shuo was undoubtedly a great challenge for these warmongers. They weren't afraid of challenges in their bones. Instead, they enjoyed challenges. The more difficult it was, the more fighting spirit they had. As the leader of the black mamba snake, the unstable factors in its bones were actually the most intense. He was also the calmest. Although he couldn't wait to help Ouyang Shuo finish this interesting topic for free, his rationality reminded him to fight for the interests of the group. The black mamba snake tried hard to control his emotions and said calmly, "Marquis Lian's suggestion is interesting. I just don't know what you're willing to pay." Ouyang Shuo obviously knew what the rattlesnake snake needed urgently. It was a reward they couldn't refuse. "I'm willing to use the god's crossbow as a reward. This amount." Ouyang Shuo extended 5 fingers. 50? The black mamba snake wasn't satisfied. It was just as Ouyang Shuo had expected. As mercenaries, the god's crossbow was the most suitable weapon among the cold weapons. 50 was close to the black mamba snake's expectation. "No." Ouyang Shuo shook his head and said, "It's 500. Hiss. Even with the black mamba snake's calmness, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. 500 god's crossbows could basically equip the rattlesnake mercenary group. With the current market price, the total value wouldn't be less than 8,000 gold coins. "Good." The black mamba snake slapped the table and said excitedly, "Marquis Lian is really generous. We'll accept this business. Don't worry. The rattlesnake mercenary group will definitely send the best instructors to Shanghai County." Ouyang Shuo's forthrightness completely convinced the black mamba snake, making it approve of this cooperation from the bottom of its heart. Ouyang Shuo nodded. This was exactly what he hoped for. Next, the two parties discussed the details of the cooperation further. The two parties agreed that the rattlesnake mercenary group would send 10 core members, including Viper and Cobra, to Shanghai County until a special force was trained for Shanghai County. At noon, Ouyang Shuo hosted a banquet for the black mamba snake and the other two at Sangha Restaurant. At the banquet, the black mamba snake couldn't help but sigh. He raised the 3-flower wine in his cup and said with a smile, "As expected of the best county in the world. This has really opened my eyes." Ouyang Shuo nodded and smiled without saying anything. After the banquet, the black mamba snake immediately returned to Jianya, while Viper and Cobra stayed behind to train a special forces unit. The first step was to select the best of the best. Without a doubt, the first one that came to Ouyang Shuo's mind was the Imperial Guards Brigade. All the soldiers of the Imperial Guards Brigade would participate in this selection. At the same time, in order to prevent other troops from saying that he was biased, Ouyang Shuo stipulated that each of the 5 brigades of the 1st Division was allowed to recommend a platoon of soldiers to participate in the selection. The 3 city guard brigades of Shanghai County, Poolwater County, and Yi County could recommend 50 soldiers to participate in the selection. Other than that, Ouyang Shuo also requested for the spies from the Military Intelligence Department to participate in the selection. One of the most important skills for a special force member was investigation. The Military Intelligence Department undoubtedly needed such professional training. After understanding the situation, the 3 heads of the Military Intelligence Department applied to join the training. Ouyang Shuo's urging was still fresh in their minds. Now that they had the opportunity to receive professional intelligence investigation training, they definitely wouldn't want to miss it. Considering that the recent intelligence work wasn't urgent, Ouyang Shuo agreed to their application. At this point, the number of soldiers participating in the preliminary selection had reached more than 3,250. Ouyang Shuo didn't set a specific elimination quota. It was entirely based on the assessment of the instructor. Those who passed would stay, and those who didn't would be eliminated. After confirming the soldiers participating in the selection, the second step was to build a specialized training base. The training base had to be built in the wilderness. Poolwater County was backed by a mountain forest, making it a more ideal choice. In the afternoon, Ouyang Shuo personally brought Python and Cobra to the southern suburbs of Poolwater County to choose a location. Under the professional guidance of the two, they chose a mountain forest. The most special part of this mountain forest was that it had a pond. Not only was it good for water collection, but it was also good for the training. Other than that, They would also choose a fixed training base in Beihai County. Ouyang Shua specially invited Sun Xiaoye to draw up the blueprint of the training base under the guidance of Python and Cobra. Then, they handed it over to the construction division for construction. The training base was very professional and required many specialized training facilities. Some of the modern facilities, such as high-pressure water cannons, couldn't be implemented under the current conditions. They could only look for alternatives. The key to realizing Ouyang Shua's vision was whether or not a qualified training base could be built. This required Python and the rest to use their professional expertise to modify the modern special training subjects so that they could meet the requirements of the training subjects and could be implemented under the current conditions. Not only that, the construction of the training base also required the cooperation of various departments. Not only did it involve the construction division, but it also required the participation of the weapons workshop, carpentry workshop, and other departments. Ouyang Shu even specially invited Weapon Master Lu Mo to temporarily put down the research work of the No. 7 Research Institute and focus on cooperating with Python and the rest to carry out the limited modernization of the training base. In order to build the training base, Ouyang Shu didn't hesitate to mobilize all the resources in the territory. With Ouyang Shua's strong support, Python and the rest were full of energy. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the other 8 members of Rattlesnake came as reinforcements. The instructors began to devote themselves to the preparation of the training plan. The selection of soldiers and the construction of the training base would be carried out simultaneously. The soldiers recommended by the brigades would also need to go through an internal selection process. Before the construction of the training base, Python and the rest would go through a physical fitness test in the western suburbs of Shanghai County. It was also the first round of elimination. To be continued. Chapter 250. In order to form a special force, other than the selection of soldiers and the construction of the training base, there was another topic that needed to be tackled, and that was the innovation of weapons and equipment. They had to be equipped with backpacks, water bottles, ropes, military shoes, first aid kits, military shovels, and other auxiliary supplies, in addition to the gold sore medicine, military rations pills, and military tents that Shanghai County already had. Other than armor, Tang saber, God's crossbow, and green beetle horse, they also needed to develop military daggers. Therefore, the formation of Special Force was a comprehensive project. If it was successful, it would be a comprehensive upgrade for the Shanghai County Army, officially embarking on the fast track of elite soldiers. Ouyang Shua's idea of elite soldiers had not been implemented. Due to the need of territorial defense, the number of territorial troops had been fluctuating around the danger line of 1 in 10. Under the guidance of Ouyang Shua's idea of professionalizing the army, the increasing size of the army brought a huge financial burden. At the same time, a large number of young laborers joining the army was detrimental to the territory's economic development. Ouyang Shua's goal was to control the number of troops to 1 in 15 or even 1 in 20. Gaia's first year, October 20th, in the western suburbs of Shanghai County. In 4 days, the construction division set up a temporary military camp in the western suburbs. 3,250 participating soldiers, together with the instructors, had already entered the military camp. The instructors, with Viper and Cobra as the captains and vice-captains, would conduct the first round of elimination of the participating soldiers. To select a special force soldier, physical fitness was the foundation. In modern military selection, physical fitness subjects included 5-kilometer weight-bearing runs, parallel bars, 400-meter steeplechase, push-ups, and other contents. These subjects were very unfamiliar to the soldiers. Therefore, the instructors did not start the selection immediately, but carried out adaptive training instead. Using this opportunity, the instructors could also understand the physical fitness of the soldiers and formulate the elimination criteria that met the ancient requirements. According to Ouyang Shua's additional requirements, in addition to adaptive training, the instructors would also conduct more basic training, including formation training, emergency assembly, housekeeping, and other recruit training subjects. In fact, the temporary military camp in the western suburbs bore the responsibility of a recruit camp. Not only did Ouyang Shuo want to form a special force, but he also wanted to integrate modern military training methods into the Shanghai County Army to improve their discipline and science. Previously, Ouyang Shuo's military drill was the embodiment of this idea. Unfortunately, Ouyang Shuo was a layman and could not practice what he preached, so the effect was not good. The arrival of the teaching team was an opportunity. Even if the soldiers who participated in the recruit camp were eliminated in the end and did not make it to the special forces, they could still bring the training subjects they learned in the recruit camp back to their respective units and promote them to the entire army. According to Ouyang Shuo's request, each brigade had to send at least one battalion commander and at least 5 platoon leaders to participate in the training. They would become the backbone of this training, and they would also be the backbone of the new recruits' training in the future and would be the backbone of the entire army. Because the officers and soldiers participating in the training were the elites of the army, Ouyang Shuo and the instructors agreed to set the training time for the recruits to be 1 month. 1 month later, the first round of the elimination test would officially begin. On the day that the new recruit camp was established, Ouyang Shuo personally came to the camp and strictly enforced discipline. He demanded that all the officers and soldiers strictly follow the instructions of the instructors and that no one was allowed to cause trouble. Otherwise, they would be punished according to military law. After that, Ouyang Shuo focused his attention on preparing for the battle on Moon Island. During this time, there was also a small incident. Song Jia suddenly returned to the Marquis Mansion. She found Ouyang Shuo and said, "Wu Wei, I want to recommend someone to you." "Who is it?" "He actually invited our sect leader Song to come down the mountain in person." Ouyang Shuo joked. Song Jia hit him and said coquettishly, "Stupid blockhead, I helped you out of kindness, and you still teased me." Okay. Tell me, who is it?" Ouyang Shuo raised his hands in surrender. "A few days ago, Tan Xiaoli and Meng Feifei came, and I accepted them into the Eastern Fence Sword faction. After they settled down, they also brought their families to the territory. Guess what? Meng Feifei's father is called Meng Jida. This person is not simple at all. In reality, he has always been a senior manager of the Jiaozhou Bank. When I heard that he should be a financial talent that you urgently need, I specially came down the mountain to tell you about it," Song Jia explained. As the Bank of the Four Seas grew stronger, Ouyang Shuo had always wanted to find a real talent to take over the Bank of the Four Seas. He wanted to end the current extensive operation of the Bank of the Four Seas and develop it in the direction of fine management. There were financial experts in the expert group that settled in Shanghai County, but they were only engaged in theoretical research. Basically, they had no experience working in banks or other financial institutions. The Song family did have such a talent, but in order to avoid arousing suspicion, both Song Jia and Ouyang Shuo consciously avoided this topic. They had never thought of asking the Song family for help. This matter gradually became a sore point for Ouyang Shuo, and Song Jia was very clear about it. Therefore, after learning about the origin of Meng Feifei's father, she hurriedly went down the mountain. Ouyang Shuo nodded with gratification and said with a smile, "Madam knows me best." "You're talking nonsense again." Song Jia was a little helpless, but she couldn't conceal the happiness in her eyes. Undoubtedly, Song Jia was very happy to be able to help Ouyang Shuo. After Song Jia returned to the sect, Ouyang Shuo found someone to invite Meng Jida to the Marquis Mansion. Meng Jida was a little surprised by Ouyang Shuo's invitation. Although he knew that the Lord of Shanghai County was his daughter's junior high school classmate, he had never thought of finding a job there. He was prepared to retire in Shanghai County. Ouyang Shuo received Meng Jida in the side hall. Meng Jida was 45 years old. He was in the prime of his life. Being an elite for a long time had formed his unique temperament and charisma. He was calm and passionate, and his character was firm and refined. It was the first time they met, but Ouyang Shuo had a good impression of this all-powerful bank elite. He smiled and said, "Uncle Meng, are you used to living in Shanghai County? Please forgive me if I'm not a good host." Ouyang Shua usually didn't put on airs in front of players. Moreover, Meng Jida was Meng Feifei's father, so he could be considered his elder. Meng Jida looked at the young man in front of him and felt a little emotional. This person was the same age as his daughter, but their achievements were like heaven and earth. At such a young age, without any background, he was able to stir up the storm in the game and become the overlord of a region. He was really a young hero. It was inevitable that a young man with such achievements would be arrogant. What was rare was that this person was not arrogant at all. He was humble and polite, which was really amazing. Meng Jida smiled and said, "Nephew, don't say that. It's all thanks to you guys taking care of Feifei." The two of them started chatting. Other than talking about life, Ouyang Shua would occasionally ask for Meng Jida's opinion on some economic issues in the territory, especially the operation of the bank. As they chatted, Ouyang Shua realized that Meng Jida was indeed not simple. He had his own unique views on economic issues, which often made Ouyang Shua's eyes light up. He felt enlightened and benefited a lot. Without hesitation, Ouyang Shua made up his mind and said, "I would like to invite Uncle to take charge of the Bank of the Four Seas. I wonder if Uncle is willing to accept this position?" Meng Jida was shocked. He had a hunch that Ouyang Shua wanted to recruit him to work in the government department. However, he never expected that Ouyang Shua would entrust him with such an important task. Although he had just arrived in Shanghai County, Meng Jida already had some understanding of the Bank of the Four Seas in Shanghai County due to his professional habits. In addition, when they were chatting, Ouyang Shua had intentionally or unintentionally revealed some information, which made him realize the importance of the Bank of the Four Seas in the system of Shanghai County. Meng Jida didn't know how to judge such an important task, given as someone he had only met for the first time. It was hard to say whether it was willful, frivolous, or ambitious. As far as Meng Jida was concerned, being able to take charge of the Bank of the Four Seas was far better than retiring in Shanghai County. As an experienced banker, it was undoubtedly very interesting to be able to take charge of an ancient bank and inject modern management concepts into it. Needless to say, taking charge of the Bank of the Four Seas would not only help improve the living conditions of his family in the game, but it would also be extremely beneficial to the final evaluation of his achievement points. Meng Jida took a deep look at Ouyang Shua and calmly said, "I am indebted to nephew's appreciation. I dare not decline." Then he stood up and bowed to Ouyang Shua. "This humble subject greets Marquis." This bow signified the difference between a ruler and a subject. Ouyang Shua panicked and quickly got up to avoid it. He said, "Uncle, why do you have to do this?" Meng Jida shook his head and said stubbornly, "Since I've already accepted the task, I am naturally a subordinate. The rules cannot be broken." He bowed again with a firm attitude. Ouyang Shua had no choice but to turn his body sideways and accept it. Meng Jida was the first player to hold an important position in the government system of Shanghai County. It was a landmark. Previously, the members of the team of experts had only served as consultants, which was completely different from Meng Jida. Of course, Meng Jida knew what kind of impact it would have on other players if he was put in an important position. It was precisely because of this that he had to abide by the rules of the subject and protect Ouyang Shua's authority as the Marquis of Lianzhou. If he used his status as an elder to break the rules of the government, he would definitely be ostracized by his colleagues, and it would be difficult for him to integrate into the government of Shanghai County. As time passed, even if Ouyang Shua was unwilling, he would have no choice but to remove him from his position. Ouyang Shua was also well aware that the current situation was no longer something that could be changed by his will. While he was building the government system, he would also be bound by it. He would have to follow the rules of the government and wouldn't be able to do as he pleased. All of this was originally hazy, but now it was torn apart by Meng Jida. What Ouyang Shua didn't know was that the manager of the Bank of the Four Seas that he had appointed today would bring the Bank of the Four Seas to a new height in the future. To be continued. Chapter 251. On October 22nd, Ouyang Shua returned to Beihai County. On this trip, Ouyang Shua didn't have any personal guards by his side. The only person accompanying him was the chief of military affairs, Gu Hongliang. At the North Sea port, the North Sea fleet was ready to set off. All the Meng Chong battleships had been modified. Ouyang Shua took out bags of rations from his interspatial pouch and distributed them to each warship. The sailors loaded the warship with barrels of fresh water, bundles of arrows, and barrels of fierce kerosene. The sails of the warships were raised one after another, along with the flags of Shanghai County and the North Sea Fleet. The flag of the North Sea Fleet, which was also the flag of the Shanghai County Navy, was replaced by a 5-story battleship with a huge blue dragon hovering above it. Before setting off, Ouyang Shua led all the officers and soldiers to worship Mazu, praying to Mazu to protect the voyage. After the sacrificial ceremony, the fleet formed an attack formation and officially set off from a port. Due to the lack of a main battleship like a fortress ship, the North Sea Fleet didn't have a flagship for the time being. They could only temporarily choose a Meng Chong battleship as the command ship, and it was situated at the center of the fleet. Accompanied by Pei Donglai, Ouyang Shua boarded the command ship. Before they departed, Ouyang Shua had already declared that Pei Dong would be in charge of commanding this battle, and he wouldn't interfere. The Meng Chong battleship was powered by oars. The side of the ship was equipped with a parapet wall that was half a person's height. There were paddle holes under the 2 bulwarks, with 12 oars on each side. The sailors rowed on the deck. Above the deck, there were 3 levels of cabins. 5 feet inside the ship was a canopy, the height of which was as high as the parapet wall. The canopy was surrounded by parapet walls. Banners and ivory flags were planted, and golden drums were placed to command the advance and retreat of attack and defense. Ouyang Shua walked up to the deck and climbed to the roof of the cabin on the first floor, arriving at the command seat. Pei Donglai waved the flag, and the drummers received the order to beat the war drums. Amidst the beating of the war drums, the warship rode the wind and broke the waves as it sailed into the sea. Uera Island was about 500 nautical miles away from the North Sea port, which was equivalent to 925 kilometers. The basic speed of the Meng Chong battleship was 14 knots, or 14 nautical miles per hour. When the wind was strong, it could reach 20 knots. When a warship sailed on the sea, there was no distinction between day and night. It was just that its speed would be slower at night. Under normal circumstances, Meng Chong's battleship could sail 300 nautical miles in a day. Therefore, it took less than 2 days to travel from North Sea port to Moon Island. Ouyang Shua stood at the bow of the ship and gazed into the distance. Apart from seawater, there was only seawater. It was extremely boring. The sea breeze blew in his face, bringing with it a salty and wet smell. On the deck, the sailors shouted a uniform chant and rowed the oars with all their might. "Marquis, go back to the cabin and rest," Pei Donglai said. Ouyang Shua nodded, then returned to his room and started cultivating in seclusion. At night, the sea suddenly blew up. Mazu Temple's sea god's protection came into play at this time. Meng Chong's warship was as steady as Mount Tai amidst the waves, speeding up towards Moon or Island. Early the next morning, Ouyang Shua walked out his room. An orange-red sun slowly rose from the horizon. The sunlight shone on the surface of the sea, sparkling. Thanks to the help of the sea breeze last night, the voyage was exceptionally smooth. According to Pei Donglai's estimation, they would be able to reach the vicinity of Moon Island by noon at the latest. The Navy soldiers all got out of bed. After a simple wash, they drank the fresh water they had brought and ate a military ration pill to ensure that they would have enough energy for the day. While there was still time, the experienced soldiers began to clean their weapons, and the archers began to adjust their bows. The lookout stood at the highest point of the cabin, observing the movements on the surface of the sea. The fierce fire oil and arrows were moved to the deck, and the soldiers took their positions, ready to fight at any time. Near noon, a small island in the distance appeared in the vision of the lookout. The lookout did not dare to be negligent. He waved the flag and signaled the drummers to sound the drums. Pei Donglai's spirit was shaken. He ordered them to form an attack formation and advance at full speed. When the North Sea fleet suddenly appeared outside of Moon Island, one could imagine how shocked the Black Shark pirates were. Fortunately, they did not go out to plunder today, and all of their members were on the island. When the leader of the Black Shark pirates, Blackbeard, received the report, he immediately ordered his subordinates to assemble and board the ship to face the enemy. The small Moon Island immediately became chaotic and busy. When the pirates were not on the move, they were very bored. There were no entertainment facilities on the island, and the only place they could go was the tavern on the island. The shabby tavern was open 24 hours a day, and there was an endless stream of customers. After yesterday's hangover, some of the pirates directly lay on the damp floor of the tavern and slept soundly. Bang! The door of the tavern was violently kicked open. The leader of the small group saw the drunkard lying on the ground. Without saying anything, he ordered someone to bring cold water and directly poured it on him. He shouted loudly, "Mother Asterisker, get up quickly, enemy attack." The pirate let out a blood-curdling scream. He was still unconscious, and he muttered, "Enemy attack, enemy attack." Seeing the other party's behavior, the small group leader was so angry that he ruthlessly kicked him. He shouted in exasperation, "If you're awake, hurry up and leave with me. Don't act like a girl." The drunkard was kicked in pain, and only then did he wake up. He got up with a grunt and followed behind his captain, walking out of the tavern. As he walked, he did not forget to ask, "Captain, who attacked us?" "Who cares? Just kill him." In fact, the small group leader himself did not know who the enemy was. Yes, he dares to have designs on our Black Shark pirates. He doesn't want to live anymore. The wine gave people courage, and it was not wrong at all. Such a scene played out everywhere on the island. The small group leaders came out in full force, gathered their subordinates, brought their weapons, and hurriedly gathered at the dock. At the dock, Blackbeard boarded the command ship and listened to the next report from his subordinates. "Great leader, the flag that the enemy raised should be the North Sea county that we have been monitoring." Blackbeard frowned. "How many warships does the enemy have?" 25, all Mengchong warships. The pirate already had some understanding of the North Sea fleet. They're not friendly. Blackbeard naturally knew the power of the Mengchong warships. Then what should we do? What should we do? Nothing. Blackbeard's face was filled with killing intent. Prepare to meet the enemy. We can't afford to lose this battle. Tell our brothers, if we don't want our nest to be destroyed, then fight to the death. Blackbeard ordered. Yes. Under Pei Donglai's command, the warships of the North Sea fleet all spread out, forming a fan and rapidly advancing. No matter how the enemy arranged their formation, they would be caught in the crossfire of the fan. On both sides of the ship, torches were set up. The archers poured fierce flame oil on the arrows and lit them on the torches, immediately turning them into fire arrows. Pei Donglai stared at the enemy warships, and when they entered the firing range, he waved the flag with force. Under his command, the war drum sounded. A wave of arrow rain soared into the sky, bringing with it bursts of fire, flashing across the clear sky. The fire arrows accurately landed on the pirate ships, instantly bringing with them bursts of fire. Blackbeard was shocked and immediately ordered for the fire to be extinguished. Unfortunately, it was too late. Wave after wave of fire arrows weaved into a fire net, covering the ship from above. Although the pirate ships were fireproof, they could not withstand the continuous fire arrows. When the fire arrows hit the sails immediately burst into flames. When they hit the cabins caught fire. When they hit the deck started to smoke. When they hit the pirates, they could only blame it on their bad luck. The pirates on fire ran up and down the deck in panic. The surrounding pirates avoided them as if they had seen the plague. In the end, the unlucky ones panicked and jumped into the sea, saving their lives. One after another, the warships started to catch fire. Thick smoke rose into the sky. It was a spectacular sight. The pirates were busy putting out the fire, unable to launch a counterattack, and could only speed up their own destruction. In the midst of the fire, the pirates started to jump into the sea to escape. Blackbeard, on the other hand, sat on a small dinghy and struggled to row towards the island. the battle on the sea would collapse in an instant. He could only hope to organize a defense line on the island to defend against the enemy. Pei Donglai knew that although the enemy's warships had been burned, the pirates still had their strength. Most of them were soaking in the sea, trying their best to swim up the island. Pei Donglai made a prompt decision in order to stop firing fire arrows and to use ordinary arrows. At the same time, the target of the arrows changed from the warships to the pirates in the sea. The archers no longer needed to pour oil on the arrows, and their efficiency immediately doubled. An even denser rain of arrows rained down on the area where the pirate ships were. Because the pirates were soaking in the sea, only half their heads were exposed. The archers had no way to aim, so they simply formed a rain of arrows, launching a large area of destruction. They did not seek to shoot accurately, only to suppress the enemy with firepower. The arrows streaked across the sky, then fell straight into the sea, shooting into the water with the force of thunder, splashing waves. If the waves turned blood red, it meant that a pirate had been shot. Being shot in the sea, there was almost no chance of survival for a pirate. Once they were shot, even if they were not shot in a vital spot, they would lose their stamina due to the blood loss and eventually drown in the sea. Streaks of blood floated in the nearby sea. Gradually, the streaks of blood began to converge, and the seawater was gradually dyed bright red. The corpses of the pirates floated on the surface of the sea, recounting the endless desolation. Amidst the soaring flames, the pirate ships let out painful groans as they sank one after another. The sinking of the pirate ships brought about waves and whirlpools. Some of the pirates who were too close to the ships were unfortunately sucked into the whirlpools and were dragged into the depths of the sea along with the pirate ships. As expected, the battle went smoothly. Once again, the fierce fire oil made a great contribution. When a North Sea fleet sailed in front of the pirate ships, there were only a few pirate ships that could still float on the surface of the sea. They were all alone, occasionally bringing up a few puffs of thick smoke. Pei Donglai had rich experience in naval warfare and ordered the warships not to get too close, lest they be overturned by the whirlpools. He ordered the warships to go around the purgatory on the sea and continue to advance toward Munar Island. When the Mengchong warships sailed past this area of the sea, the pirates who were still struggling in the sea actually cried out for help. "Help!" the pirates cried out in a pleading voice. As the great general of Shanghai County, Pei Donglai naturally knew the Marquis's consistent policy. Those who could be captured would not be killed, and those who could be persuaded to surrender would not be given up. Therefore, he ordered the pirates to be dragged onto the ships with ropes, and then tied up with ropes. To be continued. Chapter 252. After fishing the pirates onto the ship, Pei Donglai was faced with a difficult problem. Blackbeard had already gathered the remnants of his troops, a total of more than 1,000 people. How could he successfully land on the island? The North Sea Fleet did not have the Marines of the future who could carry out amphibious operations. Finally, Pei Donglai thought of a stupid idea. He ordered the 1st Battalion to land first, while the remaining 4 battalions maintained a fan formation, using bows and arrows to cover the landing of the 1st Battalion. When Blackbeard saw the enemy warships docked, he immediately ordered to stop them from landing. At this moment, a wave of arrows rained down on the pirates' path of advance. The pirates paused and hesitated, not daring to move forward. Blackbeard cursed. The enemy was too shameless. "Charge, or everyone will die." Under Blackbeard's supervision, the pirates braved the rain of arrows and advanced, trembling with fear. People were constantly hit by arrows, falling to the ground, and some even died. The pirates on the shore had already escaped death once when their ship was on fire. They had barely escaped death by jumping into the sea, and now they had to die again. They were somewhat unwilling. As the casualties increased, some pirates finally could not take it anymore, and instead retreated, sneaking to the back, tried to escape the range of the rain of arrows. When someone took the lead, others followed. Everyone was afraid of death, and the pirates were no exception. Just like that, Before they even reached the halfway point, more than half of the team had fled. Taking advantage of this time, the 1st Battalion of the North Sea Fleet had already begun to land and organize a defense. Blackbeard knew that he was powerless to stop the other party from landing, and if he continued to charge, it would only increase the casualties. "Retreat," Blackbeard said bitterly. Receiving the order, the pirates felt as if they had been pardoned and fled faster than rabbits. Ouyang Shua stood on the command ship, seeing the other party so impatient, and shook his head in amusement. Just like that, the North Sea Fleet successfully landed on the island and began to attack the remnants of the pirates. At this time, the pirates had already fled in all directions and were not organized at all. To prevent any fish from escaping, Pei Donglai ordered the 4th and 5th Battalions not to land on the island, but to patrol the sea, sealing off the waters around Moonchild Island and completely blocking the escape route of the pirates. Moonchild Island only covered an area of 50 square kilometers and was not a good hiding place. Pei Donglai tacitly implemented Ouyang Shua's surrender policy, letting the soldiers shout that those who voluntarily came out to surrender could be forgiven, while those who hid and did not want to show themselves would be killed upon capture. Pei Donglai's threat was very effective. The pirates' faces were ashen as they walked out of the island dejectedly, raising their hands to surrender. Only Blackbeard and a few other diehards were still resisting. Pei Donglai did not hold back against these stubborn people. He ordered the 1st Battalion to search for them and execute them on the spot. The purge continued for an entire afternoon before all the remaining pirates were completely wiped out. Accompanied by Pei Donglai, Ouyang Shua inspected the entire island. The Blackshar pirates were good at plundering, but their construction ability was terrible. There wasn't even a fence built in the entire colony. It was completely open. The number of buildings on the island could be counted on one hand. The place where the pirates spent the most effort was probably the dock where they landed. Walking along the pier, there was a narrow dirt road. It was full of potholes, and the surface of the road was wet. Ouyang Shua had to watch his feet carefully so that he wouldn't step into a puddle. On both sides of the dirt road, there were a few wooden houses scattered here and there. The wooden hut was built very crudely, as if it was hastily pieced together by a few wooden planks. Ouyang Shua even doubted whether such a wooden hut could block the wind and rain on rainy days. Outside the wooden hut, there wasn't any decent courtyard. There weren't any livestock or vegetables to be grown. Under the eaves, there were a few tattered clothes fluttering in the wind. Occasionally, a few skewers of dried fish could be seen drying. It was considered a rather diligent pirate's home. The surrounding fields were basically uncultivated and barren. There weren't any crops growing in the fields. On the other hand, the foxtail grass was abnormally lush, telling of some sort of decadence. From this, it could be seen that the pirates didn't produce anything at all. They completely relied on plundering resources to survive. Continuing to walk in, a pond suddenly appeared in the center of the island. Ouyang Shua estimated that it wasn't even 500 square meters. It should be the only source of fresh water on the island. Because of this, the pirates viewed the pond as their most important asset and protected it very tightly. There was a circle of buildings built around the pond. They were all made of wood and looked sturdier than the wooden houses on the periphery. This should be the core area of the pirates. The most popular tavern of the pirates was built here. The courtyard at the highest point was very eye-catching among the wooden houses. Needless to say, that must be the residence of the pirate chief. Along the way, Ouyang Shua had already lost interest in looking around and went straight to the courtyard. Even when he walked into the island, the road along the way hadn't been improved. It was still full of potholes. On both sides of the road, foxtail grass with strong vitality was swaying in the wind. Buildings were the first priority for the soldiers to clean up. Therefore, when Ouyang Shua arrived, apart from the soldiers of the North Sea Fleet on duty, there wasn't a single pirate in the house. On the ground, he could occasionally see some bloodstains and traces of a fight. Seeing Ouyang Shua, the soldier on duty immediately saluted. Ouyang Shua nodded and passed through the gate. The soldier on duty didn't expect to receive a response from the Marquis. He felt warm in his heart. Ouyang Shuo looked up and inspected the most advanced building on Moonchild Island. The small courtyard in front of him was just a simple courtyard house. It reminded Ouyang Shuo of the Lord's residence when the Shanghai village was first built. The two were very similar. Ouyang Shuo came to the meeting hall and began to patiently wait for the information gathered from all sides. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all the information was gathered at Pei Donglai's place and reported to Ouyang Shuo. Under Ouyang Shuo's indication, Pei Donglai sat down in the meeting hall and said, reporting to the Marquis, this battle was much smoother than expected. We didn't suffer many casualties, only losing a little over 150 people. Ouyang Shuo nodded. The progress of the battle was indeed beyond his expectations. We captured a total of more than 1,650 pirates in this battle. The rest of the pirates were all killed. Most of the pirate ships were burned in the fire. Only 5 or 6 ships survived and have been towed back to the docks. Pei Donglai continued to report. Through seizing the various vaults and searching the pirates' rooms, we seized a total of more than 12,500 gold coins and a box of all kinds of jewelry. The weapons, equipment, food, and other resources we seized were relatively rare. There wasn't a large stock. Ouyang Shuo nodded. This situation was also within his expectations. Pirates relied on plundering for a living. When they ran out of food, they would go out and plunder. Therefore, they definitely wouldn't have too much food. On the contrary, the gold, silver, and jewelry that the pirates plundered were all stockpiled because they didn't have a channel to purchase them. It was precisely because of this that a pirate organization of more than 3,000 people would have more than 10,000 gold coins in wealth. Take out 500 gold coins from the seized funds and reward them to the officers and soldiers. Ouyang Shuo opened his mouth and said. No one knew when it started, but Ouyang Shuo began to reward the soldiers who participated in the battle based on their merits, to encourage them to fight bravely. Thank you, Marquis, for your reward. Pei Donglai thanked on behalf of his subordinates. Did you seize any special items? Ouyang Shuo asked. The special items he was referring to were actually special items. Generally speaking, when pirates plundered everywhere, there was a high probability that they would obtain some strange items. Yes. Pei Donglai indeed didn't disappoint him. Under Pei Donglai's indication, the soldiers on duty outside moved all the seized gold coins, jewelry, and special items into the meeting hall for Ouyang Shuo to examine. Ouyang Shuo stood up. Other than leaving behind 500 gold coins, he put the rest of the jewelry and gold coins into his storage pouch. The full meeting hall became empty again. Only 2 items were left, a stone and a map. Ouyang Shuo first picked up the black stone and looked at its attributes. The stone wasn't big, only the size of 2 fists. Holding in his hand, it was indeed very heavy. Meteorite essence iron purple gold grade godstone that fell from the sky, a rare forging material. The item's attributes were very simple, but it made Ouyang Shuo's heart surge. A purple gold grade forging material. Ouyang Shuo seemed to see his personal weapon waving at him. Just this piece of meteorite essence iron made Ouyang Shuo feel that this trip was worth it. Ouyang Shuo guessed that the reason why Blackbeard didn't use this meteorite essence iron to forge a weapon was because he couldn't find a suitable blacksmith. This kind of high-grade material required at least a master blacksmith to forge. He carefully put the meteorite essence iron into his storage pouch and picked up the map. North Bay Treasure Map. One legend has it that a very famous pirate was born in the North Bay. People called him Bloody Butcher. After Bloody Butcher died, the huge amount of wealth he had plundered disappeared. Legend has it that before Bloody Butcher died, he buried this treasure on an uninhabited island. Bloody Butcher drew the location of the island into a treasure map and divided it into 3, giving it to his 3 most trusted subordinates. After Bloody Butcher died, the 3 subordinates fought each other for the treasure map. Therefore, a civil war that lasted for a year caused the pirate organization that Bloody Butcher had built before his death to fall apart. In the end, the 3 subordinates couldn't win against each other and died in depression, leaving the treasure map to their descendants. In the hundreds of years after that, the treasure map changed hands several times, causing many bloody storms. Regretfully, no one had ever successfully gathered all 3 maps and found Bloody Butcher's treasure. Slowly, there were rumors that Bloody Butcher drawing the treasure map was just a ruse. His real goal was to start a war between the pirates. This kind of speculation was very much in line with Bloody Butcher's personality. Slowly, the truth about the treasure map disappeared in the river of time. No one believed in Bloody Butcher's rumors anymore. The treasure map became a collector's item, and no one bothered to fight for it anymore. To be continued. Chapter 253. Ouyang Shua casually put away the North Bay treasure map into his storage bag. He didn't know how long it would take to collect this kind of treasure map. He might not be able to collect it even after the game ended. After checking the supplies, Ouyang Shua returned to his seat and turned to look at Pei Donglai. He asked, "General Pei, what are your thoughts on how to deal with the Moon Island?" Ouyang Shua's question didn't mean that he was trying to take Pei Donglai down. As the commander-in-chief of the North Sea Fleet, not only did he have to be decisive on the battlefield, he also had to have the corresponding strategic vision to deal with the aftermath of the battle. Pei Donglai pondered for a moment, then said, "The other facilities on Moon Island are rather simple and crude, but the docks that were built can be preserved and used as an intermediate supply station for future naval battles." Pei Donglai knew very well that the Marquis had not established the North Sea Fleet just to exterminate pirates. There must have been more important strategic arrangements. No matter what, if the fleet wanted to enter the deep sea and dominate the ocean, logistics would be an unavoidable problem. The fleet sailed day and night. If they did not have a stable temporary stop along the way, it would be a huge test for the storage of supplies and the physical fitness of the sailors. Ouyang Shua nodded, then shook his head. "What do you mean, Marquis?" Pei Donglai was a little uneasy. "Of course we will set up a supply depot." Ouyang Shua first confirmed Pei Donglai's opinion, then changed the topic. "However, this is far from enough. Although the Moonchild Island did not occupy a large area, its various conditions were very good, and it also had sufficient freshwater reserves. Therefore, we can completely transform the Moon Island into a small naval base. In order to set up a supply station, it was necessary to store a large amount of resources on the Moon Island. Correspondingly, in order to guard this batch of resources, they had to send a team to guard it. Therefore, according to Ouyang Shua's plan, he might as well complete the transformation of Moon Island in one go. This Marquis has a few requests. As for the specifics, General Pei, contact Showen. The Beihai County Construction Department will be in charge of the remodeling of Moon Island. Ouyang Shua first set the tone, then said, "First, the Moon Island's pier must be upgraded to a port. Not only do they have to provide a place for warships to dock, but they also have to provide facilities for warship maintenance and repair. Second, demolish and rebuild all the buildings on the island. The most important thing was to build a military fortress, which would serve as a stronghold for the personnel stationed on the island and a warehouse for the storage of resources. A military fortress could not only shrink its defensive power, but would also not occupy a large amount of land on the island. The carpentry workshops, blacksmiths, weapons workshops, and other supporting facilities were all built inside the fortress, forming a relatively enclosed fortress. Third, reclaim the wasteland. All the wastelands outside the military fortress had to be reclaimed to grow vegetables and other crops to achieve the island's self-sufficiency. This Marquis has estimated that Moon Island can be reclaimed into at least 50,000 mu of farmland. With such a scale, not only can we be self-sufficient, but we can even supply them to the outside world. We don't need to frequently transfer supplies from Beihai County to Moon Island for storage. Fourth, modify the pond. In order to grow crops on a large scale, there must be enough water for irrigation. Therefore, the pond needs to be expanded at least 5 to 10 times its current size, turning the pond into a small lake on the island or a small reservoir. Ouyang Shua explained the basic situation of the Moon Island that he had observed in the afternoon and combined it with his own plan. In the future, the Moon Island would have 4 major systems: a military fortress, a harbor, a reservoir, and farmland. Put together, it was a powerful naval base. After the Moon or Island Naval Base was completed, it would become the midway island for the North Sea Fleet to enter the deep sea. Pei Donglai was shocked by the Marquis' grand plan. He said respectfully, "Please rest assured, Marquis, I will definitely cooperate with the North Sea County government and complete the remodeling of the Moon Island as soon as possible." Ouyang Shuan nodded and said, "Then I will leave it to the general. On the day of the naval base's completion, I will visit Moon Island again to celebrate your success." "Yes," Pei Donglai said excitedly. After the discussion, Ouyang Shua stayed on the island for the night. The next morning, the North Sea Fleet returned. Pei Donglai left the North Sea Fleet's 1st Battalion on Moon Island. As for the pirate captives, they were all escorted back to Beihai County. Moon Island's strategic location was very important. Ouyang Shua did not feel at ease leaving these pirates on the island. On the afternoon of October 25th, the North Sea Fleet returned to Beihai Harbor. After Ouyang Shua left Beihai Harbor, he deliberately took a detour to Beihai County and had a deep conversation with the Beihai County Magistrate, Gu Xiuwen, about the construction of the Moon Island Naval Base. That night, Ouyang Shua returned to the Marquis' Manor. After returning, Ouyang Shua took out a box of jewelry and gave it to Zissou, telling her to put it into the inner treasury. Counting it, this was already the 3rd box of jewelry that Ouyang Shua had obtained. Ouyang Shua was not a stingy person. Whether it was Song Jia, Sun Xiaye, the 2 sisters Yingyu and Qing, or even the maids Zissou and Si Qin, they had all received jewelry as a reward. The next morning, after Ouyang Shua accompanied Bing for breakfast, he impatiently walked out of the Marquis' mansion and went straight to the first workshop in the Eastern District to find the master blacksmith Wang Zhuan. "Greetings to the Marquis." Wang Zhuan bowed. Ouyang Shua nodded and took out the piece of meteorite iron from his storage pouch. He put it on the table and said with a smile, "Do you recognize this thing?" When Wang Zhuan saw the meteorite iron, his eyes did not move. He stared straight at it, as if he was possessed. He could not help but get up and walk to the table. He reached out to touch the meteorite iron, as if he was touching a peerless treasure. He muttered to himself, Could this be the legendary god stone from heaven?" Ouyang Shua also did not expect that the usually unruly Wang Zhuan would have such a reaction. He nodded with a smile and said, "Yes, it is the god stone from heaven." To be honest, Ouyang Shua was still hesitating last night whether he should give this piece of meteorite iron to Wang Zhuan to forge. Such a precious forging material, naturally, the higher the level of the blacksmith, the higher the chance of success. In the game, god-level blacksmiths were either recruited by the royal family and hired as royal craftsmen, which was difficult for ordinary people to come into contact with, or they came and went without a trace, wandering without a fixed residence. To meet them, it was all luck. Moreover, although the purple gold meteorite iron was rare, it was an ordinary material in the eyes of god-level blacksmiths. It was not worth their time. Therefore, Ouyang Shua had long given up on this idea. At the very least, it was best to find a grandmaster blacksmith to forge it. If god-level blacksmiths were hard to find, grandmaster blacksmiths could still be found in the royal city. If they forged it, Ouyang Shua was sure that they could definitely forge a purple gold weapon. Ouyang Shua gave up on the temptation. The most important thing was that he hoped that Wang Zhuan could use this opportunity to make a breakthrough. At the very least, he could greatly increase his blacksmithing experience and lay the foundation for becoming a grandmaster blacksmith. Not only was he a general, but he was also a lord. When considering a problem, he had to consider the interests of the territory. If the territory could produce a grandmaster blacksmith, the benefits would be endless. Moreover, if Wang Zhuan was the one forging it, with the characteristics of the territory of Shanghai County, there was a high chance that he could forge a purple gold weapon. After getting a positive answer, Wang Zhuan's eyes lit up. He wanted to vomit the meteorite iron into his stomach. In an instant, he thought of the purpose of the Marquis' visit. A bolt of lightning flashed across his mind, and his heart almost skipped a beat. Indeed, Ouyang Shua said calmly. I want to use this piece of meteorite iron to forge a long spear. Are you confident? Although he was already mentally prepared, Wang Zhuan's emotions that had just calmed down became excited again. He stammered, Marquis, do you have any specific requirements? Ouyang Shua nodded and said, This spear will be my main weapon. The spear head will be forged with meteorite iron, and the spear shaft will be forged with meteorite iron. What do you think? Wang Zhuan looked at the size of the meteorite iron, nodded and said, That's enough. All right, I will wait for your good news. Ouyang Shua did not delay any further and stood up to leave. Yes. After Ouyang Shua left, Wang Zhuan came to the front of the meteorite iron again and observed it carefully. In his mind, he was constantly thinking about how to forge this long spear. Wang Zhuan was very clear about the difficulty and significance of forging this long spear. Therefore, he would not act rashly. He was determined to forge this masterpiece in his best condition. He must not let the Marquis down. At the end of October, the rice in the territory began to be harvested. The most important grain-producing area was naturally Pool Water County. With 400,000 mu of rice, a conservative estimate would be able to produce 120 million units of grain. With such a huge grain output, just by collecting agricultural taxes, they could collect 4 million units of grain. The collected grain would be used as military rations, enough to feed the 20,000-strong army for 3 months. Other than Pool Water County, Yuyi County, Tianfeng County, Yishui County, Gushun County, Eternal Night Town, Guanshui Town, and the headquarters of Shanghai County would all be able to harvest a batch of grain. According to the statistics from the Department of Agriculture, the entire territory would produce about 200 million units of grain in the second season of rice harvesting. From now until the beginning of July, when the first rice harvest would begin, there would still be a total of 8 months. Based on the pace of expansion and population growth of Shanghai County, in addition to the consumption of the military factory and the 3-flower wine, Ouyang Shua had roughly estimated that Shanghai County would need to purchase at least 20 million units of grain from the market to satisfy the territory's food consumption. Grain would always be a strategic resource. As the rice was harvested, the price of grain in the market fell. Similarly, after experiencing the food crisis, all the lords realized the importance of grain. From the moment the grain was harvested, all the lords, like Ouyang Shua, took stock of the grain in their territory, calculated the grain consumption of the territory for the next 8 months, and calculated the shortage of grain. Needless to say, most of the territory's grain was not self-sufficient. They had to purchase a portion from the market to make up for the shortage. Therefore, although the price of grain had fallen, the era of 10 copper coins per unit of grain was gone forever. To be continued. Chapter 254. In October, the Wolf Mountain Mine and the North Twilight Saltworks turned in 17,000 gold coins a profit. Ouyang Shua kept 5,000 gold coins and transferred the rest to the Finance Bureau. The Sanhua Winery in the western suburbs had been built and could start production next month. According to Du Chun's estimation, the winery could achieve about half of the target production capacity in November and turn in a profit of 3,000 to 4,000 gold coins. The mulberry garden expansion had also been completed, but the seedling and planting of the mulberry trees required a relatively long growth period. To realize the mulberry garden operation, it would have to wait at least next year. With the promotion of the Setting Moon Society and the establishment of the Shanghai County King's City Office, new players and NPC skill talents poured into Shanghai County every day. The influx of talents was distributed to the various affiliated territories by Ouyang Shua to promote the balanced development of the territory. With a large number of professional players and NPC skill talents recruited by the Chui Chamber of Commerce into the 3 major military workshops in the Eastern District, the production of weapons and equipment doubled. The sequela was the shortage of leather, tendons, and other materials. Leather was slightly better, and some could be purchased from the nomadic tribes through the Friendship Counter Market. Tendons were more difficult to obtain. This kind of material was a controlled item, and the Chui Chamber of Commerce could not do anything about it. In the end, it was his aunt who helped him solve this problem. In fact, adventurer players had to go to the wilderness every day to kill monsters and earn experience. In the wilderness, there were mostly wild wolves, bison, and other monsters. These monsters did not drop equipment, and players could only collect some materials. Therefore, every adventure player had more or less some leather, tendons, and other materials. After being reminded by his aunt, Ouyang Shuo made a prompt decision and sent her 10,000 gold coins, asking Snow Rose to help buy all kinds of materials from players for a long time. Of course, Lin Jing was willing. In fact, Snow Rose's guild warehouse stored a large number of leather, tendons, and other materials. In their opinion, these materials not only took up space, but also could not be cashed in. If they were sold to the shops in the king's city, it would be too cheap, and they would not be willing to accept it. Now that Ouyang Shuo, the Great Lord, was willing to buy without limit, it was naturally the best of both worlds. The purchase price agreed by the two sides was double the base price of the shops in the king's city. Even so, such a price for the huge profits of weapons and equipment was still cheap. Ouyang Shuo knew that the materials in the hands of adventurer players had not attracted the attention of the Lord players because they did not have the corresponding technical manuals and could not enter the military industry for the time being. Even Ouyang Shuo himself had only noticed this point after being reminded by his aunt. However, this situation would eventually be broken. Lords would eventually find other ways to obtain weapons and equipment crafting manuals. When that time came, the prices of various materials would skyrocket. Naturally, Ouyang Shuo did not purchase these materials for speculation, as Shanghai County was determined to become the largest arms dealer in China. The demand for materials in the future would be terrifying. He had to prepare for a rainy day. Just like that, when no one was paying attention, the materials that the adventurer players had accumulated started to flow into the hands of the merchants sent by Snow Death Rose, and then into the warehouse of Shanghai County. First, it was Jianya, and then it expanded to all of the system royal cities. The players were very willing to buy from the merchants, and they were very enthusiastic. Some players had originally thrown these materials into the guild warehouse to prevent them from taking up space in their inventory. When they received the news, they all took out their stockpiled materials from the guild and sold them to the merchants who came to purchase them. Because of this, the materials stored by the various guilds were disappearing at a visible rate. Such an anomaly naturally attracted the attention of the guild's higher-ups. After understanding the situation, they simply packed up the materials in the warehouse and sold them to the merchants. Naturally, everyone was happy. When the players put the materials in the guild warehouse, the guild tacitly allowed them to dispose of them. Of course, after the processing, the guild would calculate the contribution points for the members according to the value of the items. Abruptly, a wave of material acquisition swept across the entire China region, quietly unfolded. As the acquisition intensified, it could no longer be hidden. Whether it was the top 10 guilds or the influential lords, they all knew that Snow Death Rose had been purchasing all kinds of materials in a frenzy. The players' appetite for gossip was endless, and their ability to inquire about information was also amazing. Gradually, the relationship between Snow Death Rose and Shanghai County was uncovered by the players, and the mysterious veil was slowly torn open. The close cooperation between the two attracted the attention of many people. At this time, the family relationship between Ouyang Shuo and Lin Jing was exposed. The informant was a core member of Snow Death Rose, who had followed Lin Jing to Shanghai County. Such a betrayal undoubtedly made Xie Yun and Lin Jing extremely angry, and they immediately expelled the member from the guild. Not only that, but they also sent a law enforcement team to hunt her down, making it impossible for her to establish a foothold in Jianya. There was no doubt that this player's betrayal was orchestrated by someone behind the scenes. Even if the traitor was reincarnated, he would still receive a huge amount of compensation that could make up for his loss. As for who the mastermind behind the scenes was, Ouyang Shuo did not need to rack his brain to figure it out. After all, he could not control people like Di Chun. Lin Jing and the others were angry not because of the exposure, but because of the betrayer. One had to know that the traitor was a core member of the guild, an old minister who had fought with the studio for many years. Unexpectedly, he could not resist the temptation of outside interests and brazenly threw his years of friendship to the back of his mind. Obviously, as the game became more and more involved with the interests of the real world, the interpersonal and organizational relationships in the game would become more and more complicated and unpredictable. Ouyang Shuo was not worried about this. As the cooperation between Shanghai County and Snow Death Rose increased, it was only a matter of time before it was exposed. He had long been mentally prepared. There was no doubt that after the exposure, Shanghai County would become even more feared. Many people were shocked to find that the influence of Shanghai County had expanded to the adventure-type group. This was after it was exposed. Were there other forces in Shanghai County hiding under the iceberg? Everything was unknown. Shanghai County, which had already been shrouded in mystery, became mysterious once again. How could anyone not be shocked by such a Shanghai County? Since it was already out in the open, Ouyang Shuo decided not to hide it anymore. He sent 20,000 gold coins to his aunt, Lin Jing. He was determined to sweep away all the materials in the hands of the players in the China server. For this, Ouyang Shuo specially ordered the construction department to choose a cave and transform it into a warehouse suitable for storing such materials. There were too many materials, and leather and such took up a lot of space in the storage bag. If players used teleportation to smuggle the materials, the teleportation fee was even higher than the 10% transaction tax. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo decided to trade through the super auction platform. He had no choice but to grit his teeth and pay the transaction tax of up to 3,000 gold coins. Gaia had supervision over the transactions on the super auction platform. Players could not even think of lowering the price of goods to avoid paying the transaction tax. As the purchase went on, piles of leather, bundles of cow tendons, cow horns, and other materials were sent to Shanghai County through the super auction platform every day. They were then transported to the cave and stored. Soon, half of the huge cavern was filled. With such a large amount of materials, according to the calculations of Wu Peng and Wang Zhuan, division chief of the bow and crossbow department, division chief of the armor workshop, they could make at least 1,000,000 bowstrings, 400,000 sets of radiant armor, and various kinds of leather armor. The two of them were naturally very excited about the marquee purchase. They did not expect that the problem of materials that they were worried about would be solved so quickly, and it far exceeded their expectations. Most of the lords chose to stand by and watch Ouyang Shuo's actions. Firstly, they had just experienced a food crisis, and their funds were basically drained. Secondly, even if they bought the materials, they would not be able to use them for a while. It would be a waste of the territory's liquidity. More importantly, in the eyes of the lord players, there were endless monsters in the wild. If they really needed these materials in the future, they could just buy them from the players. There was no need to waste so much effort and compete with Shanghai County. Ouyang Shuo obviously knew what the lords were thinking. He only smiled coldly. When it came to understanding the game, no one could compare to him. In theory, there were indeed endless monsters in the wild. The crux of the problem was that the distribution of monsters was relatively even. Even though Gaia had more monsters around the capital to take care of adventurous players, the number was still limited. Most of the monsters were in the mountains and forests, making it difficult for adventurous players to come into contact with them. As players passed the novice stage, they no longer needed to rely on killing monsters to gain experience. In other words, the experience gained from killing monsters was very limited. They had to venture deep into the wilderness to compete with bandits and bandits. Therefore, the first year of the game was the period when players killed the most monsters. It was also the best period to purchase all kinds of materials. After that, the supply of various materials would gradually decrease. On the other hand, as players' levels increased, their personal savings would also increase steadily. The money they earned from selling materials was no longer important to the players. Naturally, they would not have the motivation to kill monsters or gather leather and other materials. There was another point. Compared to bows, bowstrings were more easily damaged and needed to be replaced. In the Tang Dynasty army, a bow needed 3 bowstrings. Therefore, the consumption of things like beef tendons was huge. Ouyang Shua's sweeping came at the right time. He swept clean the materials that the players had accumulated for almost a year, eating the biggest and most delicious piece of the cake. For this operation, Ouyang Shua paid a one-time sum of 33,000 gold coins. Other than the 100,000 gold coins that could not be used, he only had a pitiful 3,000 gold coins left in his storage bag. This stroke of genius also helped Shanghai County develop its military industry. It established a very solid material foundation. There was no need to worry about materials for a long time in the future. To be continued. Chapter 255. Handan County, the meeting hall of the Lord's Mansion. I didn't expect to catch such a big fish. Di Chun stood in the hall, looking out of the door with an inexplicable expression. Knowing that Shanghai County was cooperating with Snow Sorrow Rose, Di Chun immediately sent people to contact the core members of Snow Sorrow Rose. With a large sum of money, they finally got one to talk. The news he received caught Di Chun, the instigator of all this, off guard. Peerless Elegance sat in the hall, her expression cold. She said slowly, "We need to speed up the negotiations with crisscrossing Sword Chi. Hao Wui is one step ahead of us." Di Chun did not turn around. With his hands behind his back, he said helplessly, "One sword from the west is demanding too much. This fish is not easy to deal with. The people below have found out that one sword from the west and the rain-listening pavilion, this thunderous Sword Chi, once had an emotional entanglement. Perhaps we can use this as a breakthrough to get one sword from the west to talk. Okay, I'll leave this matter to you." Di Chun finally turned around and said affectionately to Peerless Elegance. Peerless Elegance frowned and nodded silently. She did not make any promises. Military Kill Ripper has been a little restless recently. He is very close to Lord Chunshin. Di Chun said as he sat down and took a sip of tea. He said bitterly, "I didn't expect to go for wool and come home shorn." Peerless Elegance shook her head and said, "You don't have to worry. Through Military Kill Ripper's probing, at least we have first-hand information about the Shanghai County Army. As for Military Kill Ripper's proximity to Lord Chunshin, you don't have to worry." "Oh, what do you mean?" "Lord Chunshin is a person who is extremely shrewd and suspicious by nature. Military Kill Ripper has been following us. How can Lord Chunshin trust him like this? He's just a pawn." Di Chun nodded, agreeing with Peerless Elegance's judgment. But Peerless Elegance frowned and said uneasily, "Compared to Military Kill Ripper, I am more worried about Hao Wui. From the information we have gathered, Shanghai County has spent a lot of money on this purchase." "Yes." Di Chun sighed and said with a bitter smile, "Grandfather thought that by sowing discord, we could cut off Shanghai County's funds and make them unable to survive the food crisis. Who would have thought that not only was the other party safe and sound, but he was also wealthy? I really don't know where he got all these funds from." Di Chun didn't know what to feel when he thought of his grandfather's dark face. Ever since he was young, his grandfather had been an insurmountable mountain that he could not overcome, and he had been pressured to the point that he could not breathe. Unfortunately, the routine in the game was completely different from reality. Even his grandfather, an old hunter, had failed time and time again and was humiliated by not wearing anything. If that's the case, the upcoming annual auction will be a bloodbath. We must not let our guard down. However, they already knew about the annual auction. The power of a large clan was indeed not to be underestimated. There's no other way. Let's just live frugally. We're determined to get that thing. Di Chun was also helpless. He didn't know if he was lucky or unlucky to have an opponent like Hao Wui. Ouyang Shua's actions caused a lot of discussion within the Alliance of Mountains and Seas. "Boss, you have hidden your strength well. Even Snow Death Rose is your ally." Siege Lion was the first to make fun of him. "If there's anything you need from a player's guild, you can look for them." Since he had already laid it all out, Ouyang Shua decided to include Snow Death Rose in the Alliance of Mountains and Seas. "That's possible," Dragon's Searching Acupoint said. "With the help of a guild, many things will be much more convenient. It's mutually beneficial. Ahem. Actually, Dolly's Breeze Pavilion is also a guild related to our Lingxi County. Taking this opportunity, Bai Hua also revealed his trump card. After the relationship between Shanghai County and Snow Death Rose was exposed, the pavilion master of Breeze Pavilion, Bright Moon Illuminates the River, immediately contacted Bai Hua. After some discussion, the siblings decided to take the initiative to announce their relationship. This way, Breeze Pavilion and Snow Death Rose could rely on each other in the competition between guilds. This way, they would be able to avoid friendly fire, and they could also effectively fight against the other 10 guilds. Bai Hua's announcement didn't cause too much of a commotion. Aside from Feng Qiuhuang, all of the members of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas knew of the famous Lingxi studio. In the previous game, they were famous for managing guilds. Even if they switched to territory development mode, they wouldn't completely say goodbye to guilds. It was only natural for them to arrange for a portion of their members to establish guilds. No wonder. Dragon's searching acupoint wasn't done yet. Bai Hua smiled. Of course, she could hear the meaning behind Dragon searching acupoint's words. After the food crisis, the Bank of the Four Seas had conquered almost all of the territories of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas. The only exception was Lingxi County. Everyone was curious as to how Lingxi County had survived this crisis. It was only when the identity of Breeze Pavilion was revealed that everyone understood. With the help of Breeze Pavilion, there was nothing to worry about. Wow, why do I feel like our Alliance of Mountains and Seas can dominate not only the Lord class players, but also the Adventure class players? Siege Lion said with a smile. Ouyang Shuo furrowed his brows. This wasn't a good attitude. He said, "Everyone, don't let your guard down. Also, only the few of us know about Breeze Pavilion. Don't spread it. The longer the better." Ouyang Shuo still liked to hide his trump cards. He didn't like his enemies to see through everything. Understood. Feng Qiuhuang didn't say anything. After everyone had digested the information about Breeze Pavilion, he said, "Wooey, according to the time, the third battle should be starting soon, right?" Ouyang Shuo nodded. "More or less. According to the previous pattern, I estimate that the third battle will be triggered after the 100 County Town is promoted. Then it really might start any time. Should we make preparations? How should we prepare? We don't even know which battle it will be." Siege Lion asked. Feng Qiuhuang came prepared. According to the pattern of the previous two battles, after Western Zhou, the third battle should be an iconic battle that happened during the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. That's right. During this period, there were many famous historical figures. Dragon's searching acupoint was more sensitive about this. That's right. There were countless strategists and generals. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Which battle do you think Gaia will choose? The Spring and Autumn Warring States period, especially the Warring States period, was filled with endless wars. There were too many famous battles, so it's hard to guess. Dragon's searching acupoint said, feeling conflicted. In my opinion, although there were many famous battles during the Spring and Autumn Warring States period, the most iconic battle would be the Battle of Chongping. Feng Qiuhuang was confident. Everyone was shocked, and then came to a realization. It might really be as Feng Wu speculated. Bai Hua was the first to support. "Wui, what do you think?" Feng Qiuhuang asked curiously when he saw that Ouyang Shuo hadn't said anything. Ouyang Shuo's heart trembled. Of course he knew that the third battle was the Battle of Chongping that Feng Qiuhuang speculated. It seemed that the Lord players had gradually figured out Gaia's battle strategy. In this case, Ouyang Shuo's prediction of the battle would be greatly discounted. I also think that there's a 90% chance that it will be the Battle of Chongping. Ouyang Shuo said calmly. The Battle of Chongping was the most tragic battle in history. Both Qin and Zhao invested more than 1 million troops, and both sides were elite troops. Their combat power was comparable to ours, and they might even be stronger. Such a battle won't be easy to deal with. We won't become bystanders, will we? Dragon searching acupoint was very clear about history. Bystanders? Impossible. I estimate that the number of players in this battle will exceed 100,000. No matter how bad it is, it won't be bystanders. Feng Qiuhuang had high hopes. In fact, after the spring and autumn warring states period, it's already impossible for us to rely on the advantage of weapons and equipment to crush the other armies like we did in the previous two battles. We can't do it, but Big Brother, you can. The Tang Dynasty's radiant armor and the Song Dynasty's infantry armor. The spring and autumn warring states period didn't have such powerful armor. Siege Lion joked, "That's right, boss. When will Shanghai County's weapons and equipment be sold to us? You have no idea, but Qin Xiong keeps pestering me for the radiant armor. It's so annoying." Dragon Searching Acupoint added in. "We are working hard to build a military system. The earliest will be next year," Ouyang Shua said with a wry smile. He knew that they had not given up on the infantry armor and radiant armor. Back to the topic at hand. Feng Qiuhuang noticed that the three men were straying off topic again. He said anxiously, "If the deduction is accurate, this battle won't be easy. We should make early preparations." The crux of the problem is how long Gaia has extrapolated the Battle of Chongping to. After all, the Battle of Chongping has been going on for 3 years. There are too many variables, Dragon Searching Acupoint said with a frown. Indeed, even Ouyang Shua did not know how Gaia had extrapolated it. If it was the early stages of the battle, and the Zhao Kingdom had not replaced Lianpo with Zhao Qua, then both sides would be evenly matched. Choosing the Zhao Kingdom's camp would allow them to turn the tables. If Gaia had pushed the battle to the point where the Zhao army was trapped by the Qin army, then the Qin camp would have the absolute advantage. It would be difficult for the players to turn the tables. There's no point in thinking too much. Let's discuss it after the battle is announced. Ouyang Shua was momentarily at a loss. "All right," Feng Qiuhuang said unhappily. "Wui, don't forget about the Yin-Huang alliance," Bai Hua reminded. "This is the first battle that the Yin-Huang alliance will experience since its establishment. They lost so badly in the first two battles because they did not understand the battle. In addition, Yu Wui made a surprise move. Now that the third battle is so easy to guess, Di Chun and the others are not stupid. They will definitely make the same judgment as us. This way, both sides will be on the same starting line. They will definitely want to turn the tables, so we have to be on guard. If you want to fight, let's fight. What's the big deal?" Siege Lion said domineeringly. Ouyang Shua nodded and did not say a word. To be continued. Chapter 256. Turning off the Alliance channel. Ouyang Shua was still thinking about the third battle. The Battle of Chongping, which side to choose, how to plan, all these were repeatedly rehearsed in his mind. While he was lost in thought, his secretary Lang by Nanpu walked in. "Marquis, the head of the first workshop, Wang Zhuan, invites you to the workshop. He said it has something to do with the weapon forge for you." Ouyang Shua was startled. It had been 5 days since he gave the meteorite iron to Wang Zhuan. Calculating the time, the forging should be finished. He just didn't know why Wang Zhuan didn't directly send the spear to the Marquis' mansion, but instead invited him. Could it be that there was a problem with the forging? Without thinking too much, Ouyang Shua hurriedly walked out of the office. He hurried to the workshop of the first workshop. A young blacksmith stood at the door. When he saw Ouyang Shua, he said respectfully, "Greetings, Marquis. The head of the workshop is in the workshop. Please follow me." Ouyang Shua nodded and followed the blacksmith to Wang Zhuan's exclusive workshop. As soon as he entered, a wave of heat hit him. In the workshop, besides Wang Zhuan, there were 3 assistants who were helping Wang Zhuan with the final tempering of the spear. At this moment, it was obviously a critical moment. Wang Zhuan's whole body was already soaked. Bean-sized beads of sweat flowed down like a drizzle, dripping on the red-hot workbench, giving off bursts of white smoke. The young blacksmith walked to Wang Zhuan's side and whispered. Wang Zhuan nodded slightly and continued the final forging. Ouyang Shua was not in a hurry. He simply stood at the door and waited. 10 minutes later, Wang Zhuan stopped hammering and took the sweat towel from his assistant. After wiping the sweat off his face, he walked to Ouyang Shua's side and said, "Marquis." Ouyang Shua nodded. "Why did Head Wang invite me here?" Soldiers are also weapons. When a divine weapon is forged, it needs to drink human blood. Later, Marquis, please contribute a few drops of blood and inject it into the divine weapon to awaken its spirituality. Wang Zhuan explained. Ouyang Shuo suddenly understood. Wasn't it just a drop of blood to recognize the owner? Why did it sound so mysterious? Without hesitation, he pulled out the tang knife from his waist and made a small cut on his hand. Half a bowl of blood dripped out. He took the gauze from his assistant and bandaged it. For Ouyang Shuo, who practiced inner force, such a small wound could be healed within a day. Wang Zeng took the porcelain bowl filled with fresh blood and returned to the workbench. He ordered his assistant to throw the spear into the furnace. When the spear turned red, Wang Zeng's hands and eyes were sharp, and he accurately poured the blood in the bowl onto the spear. As soon as the blood touched the spear, it seeped into the spear at a speed visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, the spear was covered in a layer of red, shining with a bewitching light. It flickered as if it had a mind of its own. Amidst the raging flames, a demon god appeared out of thin air. Its demonic nature was monstrous, and its ferocious might was impressive. A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, indicating that the spear was extraordinary. Now, Wang Zhuan was completely focused. Although the phenomenon was beyond his imagination, he was still calm and collected. He ordered his assistant to help him take out the spear and proceed with the final steps of quenching and annealing. After the last hammer strike, Wang Zhuan was immediately paralyzed. With the help of his assistant, he could barely stand. Even so, a look of joy appeared on Wang Zhuan's face. A system notification rang in Ouyang Shuo's ears. System notification. Congratulations to player, not say you have no clothes. The territory's blacksmith, Wang Zhuan, has broken through the shackles and has been promoted to a Grandmaster Blacksmith. Reward, 2,000 reputation points. Following that, there was a system announcement. System notification. Congratulations to Shanghai County for giving birth to the first Grandmaster Blacksmith in the player territory. Shanghai County is specially granted the title Home of Forging. Ouyang Shuo checked the specific attributes of Home of Forging. Home of Forging, territory's blacksmith proficiency increased by 10, blacksmith-type refugee attraction increased by 15. It was a very practical attribute. Ouyang Shuo guessed that it might also have a title like Home of Tailors. Wang Zhuan's promotion and the attributes of Home of Forging would definitely drive the territory's blacksmiths to a higher level, which in turn would promote the rapid development of the military industry. After a short rest, Wang Zhuan held the spear that he had just forged and went to Ouyang Shuo. Marquis, I have accomplished my mission. Please give this spear a name, Marquis. Ouyang Shuo took the spear and felt it sink in his hand. According to Ouyang Shuo's requirements, the spear was forged according to the shape of a spear. It was completely black, 11 feet long, and weighed 35 kilograms. The spearhead was 1 foot and 3 inches long, and the tip was 3 inches long. It was incomparably sharp. The most special thing about the spear was the demon god's pattern that automatically formed on the body of the spear. It was vivid and lifelike, as if it wanted to devour someone. According to Wang Zhuan, this pattern wasn't carved by him, but formed automatically after it was soaked in blood. Ouyang Shuo immediately thought of the demon god's bloodline in his body and immediately understood. He said, "This spear was forged from extraterrestrial divine stones and nourished by the demon god's blood essence. It's called the Sky Demon Spear." Name, Sky Demon Spear, purple gold, hardness, 75, sharpness, 65, toughness, 55, characteristics. Blood devouring. There is a certain chance of devouring the enemy's blood essence to promote the weapon's evolution. Evaluation. Forged from extraterrestrial divine stones and nourished by the demon god's blood essence, it mutated and finally became a divine weapon. Bind owner with blood. Cannot be traded, cannot be dropped, and can be evolved again. If Ouyang Shuo hadn't provided the demon god's blood, this spear would have most likely fallen short of success. It would have only been able to reach dark gold rank and not purple gold rank. The Sky Demon Spear was undoubtedly very powerful. It was comparable to Song Jia's Azure Sharp Sword. The most important thing was that the Sky Demon Spear could evolve again. Blood Devouring, as characteristic, determined that as long as the Sky Demon Spear devoured enough blood essence of experts, it could evolve into a true divine weapon and become invincible. Ouyang Shuo gently stroked the spear's body and muttered to himself, "Sky Demon Spear, follow me to the battlefield. Drink the enemy's blood and forge an invincible name." The Sky Demon Spear seemed to have sensed something. It lightly jumped and a smear of red flashed. Ouyang Shuo was overjoyed. He didn't expect the spear to have such intelligence. The demon god's bloodline was indeed extraordinary. He thought that he could also use this method when he forged a higher grade radiant armor in the future. Finally, he had a weapon that he could use. Ouyang Shuo took the opportunity to check his personal attributes. Name: Don't Say I Have No Clothes, Title 1. Marquis of Lianzhou, Title 2. State Scholar omitted. Territory: Shanghai County. Occupation: General, part-time. Level 55. Achievement: 90500/102400. Noble title: Third rank Marquis. Reputation: Fame: 77,000/100000. Inner force: 5800/10,000. Root bone: 18 + 8. Comprehension: 21 + 4. Fortune source: 5. Charm: 8. Commander: 75 + 10. Martial power: 38 + 5. Intelligence: 20. Politics: 57. Talent: Omitted characteristics: Omitted mental. Cultivation method: Yellow Emperor's Cannon of the Inner Qi. Level 4/12. Cultivation method: Bajikwan Scripture, easy. Yang Family Spear Scripture, advanced. Art of War. Omitted skills: Advanced detection, advanced weapon proficiency, savage beast taming technique, basic, mount. Omitted accessory: Omitted armor. Omitted weapon: Demonic spear, purple gold, special items. Cooling pearl, North Sea Harbor treasure map, 1, etc. After players broke through level 50, the difficulty of leveling up increased once again. 5.5 months had passed since the end of the Zhuolu battle, but Ouyang Shuo had only risen from level 48 to level 55. Among the acquired attributes, once the acquired attributes exceeded 80 points, every increase required 5 free attribute points. Once the acquired attributes exceeded 90 points, every increase required 10 free attribute points. Ouyang Shuo decided that once the commander attribute reached 80 points, he would add points to force. When the force attribute also reached 80 points, he would start adding points to the commander attribute. His current stats were still far from Luo Shixin's, and he was even further from Shi Wansui's. He was basically equivalent to an intermediate general. Last month, Ouyang Shuo had broken through to the 4th level of the Yellow Emperor's Cannon of the Inner Qi. His maximum inner force had doubled to 10,000 points. He could now circulate at 12 times a day, increasing his inner force by 10 points every day. In a day, he could increase his inner force by 120 points. He still needed a month to break through to the 5th level. More importantly, Ouyang Shuo felt that after breaking through to the 4th level, be it the number of circulations or the increase in inner force per day, they had basically reached their limits. If he didn't have any other fortuitous encounters, it would be very difficult for him to improve again. Ouyang Shuo's mount, armor, and weapon were all purple gold grade. The only shortcoming was his accessories. He only had the black iron grade ring of courage and the silver grade strength of barbarism, which were a little embarrassing. Ouyang Shuo closed his stats panel and left the first workshop. As soon as he returned to the manor, Lei Sun was already waiting for him. Although Lei Sun had participated in the recruit training in the western suburbs, the military intelligence department hadn't completely stopped operating. Important information would still be reported to Ouyang Shuo. Marquis, there's the latest news from the plains. Ouyang Shuo was already mentally prepared to see Lei Sun. It had been 3 months since Operation Wildfire, which aimed to break the balance between the nomadic tribes and the plains. There should be an outcome by now. In these 3 months, Ouyang Shua didn't relax his surveillance of the plains. After Operation Wildfire, the Sky Boundary Tribe was defeated in the western part of the town. They couldn't rebuild the western part of the town in a short period of time and lost their deterrence against the small and medium-sized tribes in the west. The medium-sized tribes in the west were the first to launch an attack. They ignored the Sky Boundary Tribe's warning and brazenly invaded the small tribes next to them. They plundered their cattle, sheep, and people and took over their farms. In the end, the Sky Boundary Tribe only gave a verbal warning and didn't take any further military actions. Such actions were naturally interpreted by the other tribes as the Sky Boundary Tribe losing their deterrence. Therefore, larger-scale annexation operations were carried out in the east, south, and north at the same time. For a time, the flames of war raged on the plains. The market outside of Friendship County benefited from this. They used food and iron or to exchange for a large number of cyan beetle horses and equipped the 2nd Brigade. To be continued. Chapter 257. The spy reports that the grassland have regained their peace, Lei Sun said. According to the intelligence agency's spy, the small tribes on the grasslands had all disappeared after 3 months of war. They were either annexed by the surrounding mid-sized tribes or merged into the Sky Order tribe. The entire grasslands now only have the Sky Order tribe at the center and 8 surrounding mid-sized tribes, 1 in the north and south, and 3 in the east and west. The Sky Abundant tribe to the north of Friendship County has annexed the small tribes in the east after annexing the Mercy tribe to the west, becoming the only tribe in the south. Their strength has increased greatly. Ouyang Shua nodded. What he was concerned about now was what the grasslands tribes would do next. Are there signs of the mid-sized tribes forming an alliance? Ouyang Shua asked. According to normal tactics, the best choice would be for the mid-sized tribes to unite and eliminate the Sky Order tribe. The problem was that although the Sky Order tribe had been destroyed in the west, they were still the greatest power on the grasslands and had accumulated power for a long time. They couldn't make up their minds to make a move against the Sky Order tribe in such a short time. The 8 mid-sized tribes have indeed formed a loose alliance. The alliance hasn't taken action due to the lack of a powerful figure. On the contrary, the mid-sized tribes on the east and west sides have had many conflicts in the process of annexing the small tribes. It's very difficult for them to work together. Ouyang Shua smiled coldly. This is the evil of human nature. Who knows? The mid-sized tribes on the east and west sides are still scheming against each other. Marquis is wise. There are indeed signs. The crux of the problem is how we should intervene and muddy the waters again. As one of the 3 heavyweights of the intelligence agency, Lei Sun had a unique strategic vision and was very sensitive to intelligence. Marquis, there's another piece of information. According to the spy's report, after the Sky Abundant tribe annexed the small tribes in the east, the tribe's confidence soared and their ambition swelled. Some of the nobles in the tribe have turned their greedy eyes to Friendship County. Ouyang Shua's eyes turned cold. You're saying that the Sky Abundant tribe has designs on Friendship County? That's a possibility. Marquis, think about it. The market outside of Friendship County has a lot of goods traded every day. Previously, they were busy dealing with the small tribes and could only obediently trade at the market. Now that the annexation war has ended, the nomadic tribe's nature of plundering has once again been exposed. Lei Sun calmly analyzed. Lei Sun's information had opened up Ouyang Shua's train of thought. A bolt of lightning flashed in his mind, and he suddenly had an idea. He then said in an awe-inspiring tone, "Since that's the case, we might as well beat them at their own game. We'll eliminate the heavenly abundant tribe, intimidate them, and forcefully intervene in the affairs of the prairie." You're right. An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin. I reckon that it's not just the Sky Abundant tribe. The other tribes are also restless. But Lei Sun was a little hesitant. If we do this, won't the tribes of the prairie unite against a common enemy? What if they put aside their internal conflicts and unite against a common enemy? Ouyang Shua nodded appreciatively and said, "Of course we can't rule out this possibility. Therefore, the first thing we need to do is to destroy their alliance, so that the other medium-sized tribes have no time to care about them. Didn't you say that the middle-sized tribes on the east and west sides didn't get along? Arrange for spies to sow discord between them, add fuel to the fire, and make them fight each other. Understood. Lei Sun felt a heavy burden on his shoulders. For November 2nd to November 5th, the prairie, which had just regained its peace, became noisy again. In just a few days, 5 or 6 robberies happened in succession in the border areas of the 6 medium-sized tribes on the east and west sides. The robbers were experienced, and their goals were clear. They didn't leave anyone alive. None of the herdsmen at the border were spared. Their whole families were either killed, or their cattle and sheep were robbed. The bloodstains told of the endless desolation. All the signs showed that the murderers had crossed the border to kill people, and the spearhead was directed at the tribes on the opposite side. The hatred within the tribes was fully aroused. Voices asking for battle rose one after another. The higher-ups of the tribes naturally wouldn't be so reckless. They were worried that someone was deliberately sowing discord. The target of suspicion was naturally the Skymark tribe, which had been silent for 3 months. They all agreed that the Skymark tribe had planned this series of robberies. Their goal was naturally to destroy the alliance of medium-sized tribes and solve the crisis of extinction. Before the higher-ups could investigate clearly, the nobles in the tribe began to be assassinated. They either died in their own tents or in the wilderness. For a moment, the wind was blowing and the cranes were in a state of panic. At this moment, the 2nd Brigade stationed in the northern barracks left the barracks in the name of training. They crossed the Friendship River with great fanfare and disappeared. Not long after the 2nd Brigade left, a large batch of iron, ore, and grain was transported to the warehouse in the market outside Friendship County. The inadvertently scattered iron ore dazzled the eyes of the nomads who were trading in the market. In the tent of the chief of the Skymark tribe. Chief, this is a great opportunity. We can't hesitate anymore. As neighbors of Friendship County, the movements of the northern barracks and the market naturally couldn't be hidden from the eyes of the Skymark tribe. They were already eager to make a move. When they got the news, they were excited. Yes, Chief. As long as we arrange a 1,000-man army, we can definitely take the market. Sitting in the seat of honor, Dariachi frowned and said in a deep voice, "Use your brains. There are too many flaws in Friendship County's actions. It's obviously a trap. Chief, whether it's a trap or not, the final competition is still military strength. As long as we take the market, what can the army of Friendship County do to us? Even if it's a trap, we have to make them suffer." The one who spoke was the tribe's general, General Hyukito, Dariachi's confidant. Yes. Huchitu's opinion was unanimously agreed by everyone. Dariachi's heart skipped a beat. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't tempted by the market's resources. But as the chief of the tribe, he was more cautious when considering problems. Huchitu, what you said is not unreasonable. The problem is that there have been a series of assassinations in the grasslands these days. A storm is coming. It's not a good time to act rashly. Chief, I think that this is the reason why we should be more decisive. We should take this opportunity to obtain a large amount of iron, ore, and grain. Only then will we be invincible. Huchitu's attitude was firm. Huchitu's opinion coincided with that of the other nobles in the tribe. Dariachi sighed in his heart. Huchitu's opinion was enlightening. It made him wonder if he was too conservative. If one wanted to dominate, it was good to be cautious, but if one was too cautious, they would miss a great opportunity. To be continued. Chapter 258. The Han people had a good saying, "If you don't take advantage of the heavens, you will be punished. If you don't take advantage of the situation, you will be punished." All right, Dariachi made up his mind. Huchitu, I order you to lead 1,000 men and take down the market. Dariachi lost his usual calmness. Under the impact of victory, the incitement of the nobles, and the temptation of benefits, he became fanatical and completely dragged the sky-abundant tribe into the abyss of hell. Yes, Huchitu was full of confidence. On the 6th day of the 11th month, when Friendship County was defenseless, the sky-abundant tribe's Chiliarch Huchitu led a large army and suddenly crossed the moat outside Friendship County, raiding the market. The army chased away the merchants who were doing business in the market and plundered all the goods. In the end, they did not forget to set the market on fire and burn it to the ground. Amidst the flames, the army left with a large amount of spoils of war. The market outside Friendship County had long become an important place for nomadic tribes to trade. Every tribe, including the Sky-Abundant tribe, had merchants stationed at the market. The Sky-Abundant tribe's actions were like a hurricane that spread throughout the grasslands. When the tribes received the news, some were envious, some were afraid. Most of them were regretful. They regretted that they did not think of letting the despicable Sky-Abundant tribe get ahead of them. The victors were full of themselves. When large amounts of iron, ore, and food were successfully transported back to the tribe's headquarters, the entire tribe was in an uproar. That night, a grand bonfire party was held. Even Dariachi could not believe it. He was glad that he did not miss this opportunity. According to statistics, the food seized this time was enough for the tribe to use for half a year. The iron ore could be used to forge countless arrows, sabers, and armor. The Sky-Abundant tribe was one step closer to dominating the grasslands. The next day, before the afterglow of the party had faded, the envoy from Friendship County had arrived. The envoy strongly condemned the Sky-Abundant tribe's plundering and demanded that the tribe return all the goods and compensate with 500 green beetle horses to compensate for the losses of Friendship County. Ha ha, ha. The envoy's words were mocked by the nobles of the tribe. The envoy's expression did not change. He was calm and composed. Dariachi sat at the head of the tent and shook his head in amusement. What if I say no? If your tribe refuses, we can only meet on the battlefield. How arrogant. Do you know who you were talking to? Hyuki to be raided. The success of the raid had greatly increased his prestige in the tribe, and he was now seen as the tribe's hero. The emissary's eyes narrowed. In a neither servile nor overbearing manner, he turned to look at Huchitu and calmly said, "You must be General Huchitu who led the raid on the market, right? Our marquis said that the culprit must be punished." "You." Huchitu was enraged, his blood boiling. "How dare you? See if I don't kill you." As he spoke, he unsheathed the scimitar at his waist and walked towards the emissary. "Wait." Suddenly, Dariachi stopped Huchitu and asked in confusion, "What did you just say, Marquis? A small Yi county dares to call itself a marquis?" Facing the overbearing Huchitu, the emissary was not afraid at all. His expression did not change, as if he did not exist. Hearing Dariachi's question, he turned his head and said, "There is no room for reconciliation for insulting the marquis. Farewell." "Stop right there." Hukitu shouted at the emissary and sneered. "Still want to leave? What? You want to kill me? An emissary? Bullsh asterisk T emissary. Go to hell." Huchitu raised his scimitar and slashed down. "Stop." Dariachi shouted in time and said in a deep voice, "The Han people have a saying, when two countries are at war, envoys are not to be killed. Don't let outsiders think that our grassland tribes are uncultured. Let him go." "Chief." Huchitu was unwilling to give up. "I said let him go." Dariachi was a little angry. He found that Huchitu was getting carried away. "Yes." Huchitu was smart enough to detect the displeasure in the chief's tone and retreated unhappily. Dariachi looked at the emissary and said, "Go back and tell your so-called marquis not to humiliate himself." The emissary shook his head in amusement and walked out of the tent in silence. As early as when the spies from the Military Intelligence Department were dispatched, the military office had already begun to mobilize the army. After 2 annexations, the population of the Sky-Abundant tribe had exceeded 8,000 people. Based on the nomadic tribe's tradition of all citizens being soldiers, the tribe's regular army had expanded from 1,000 men to 3,000 men. In this battle, Ouyang Shua did not mobilize the troops from the western and eastern barracks. They were busy suppressing the bandits. If they were to be conscripted here at the last minute, not only would it require a lot of manpower, but it would also easily disrupt the bandit suppression deployment. The troops on the expedition included the 2nd Brigade of the 1st Division that had temporarily withdrawn to the base camp, the Imperial Guard Brigade that was undergoing training in the Western Suburbs recruit camp, the City Guard Brigade of Shanghai County, the City Guard Brigade of Poole County, and the City Guard Brigade of Yi County. There were a total of 5 brigades with 12,500 soldiers, which was more than 4 times the number of the Tianfeng tribe's army. Other than the Shanghai County City Guards Brigade, the Poole Water County City Guards Brigade and the Friendship County Guards Brigade had only been established for a month. After forming an army, they did not have the opportunity to participate in actual combat, so their combat power was slightly weaker. Ouyang Shuo mainly relied on the Forbidden Brigade and the 2nd Brigade, these 2 trump card brigades. These 2 brigades were already equipped with green beetle horses, radiant armor, and long lances. The blue beetle horses of the 1st Division's 2nd Brigade were fully equipped with armor, becoming a true heavy cavalry. As for the Praetorian Brigade, in order to maintain sufficient mobility, they voluntarily gave up on their war horses and armor. The sudden military operation forced the training in the Western Suburbs recruit camp to be suspended. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, the 10 instructors of the Rattlesnake mercenary group had already been teleported back to Jianya. After the war ended, they would return to Shanghai County to continue their recruit training. Gaia 1st Year, November 8th, Yi County. On the city wall, the Shanghai County Lord's flag slowly rose, shining brightly under the sunlight. It was a declaration that the forces of Shanghai County had officially invaded the grasslands, revealing their long-hidden claws and teeth. Facing the morning sun, the soldiers of the 5 brigades lined up neatly, waiting for the Marquis's inspection. Ouyang Shaw, accompanied by Wang Feng, Lin Yi, and other generals, went up to the high platform to inspect the troops. He issued a demand for annihilation, accusing the Tianfeng tribe of neglecting their cooperative relationship, brazenly attacking the Yi County market, and plundering resources. Not only that, but they also rejected the messenger's terms of reconciliation, looking down on Shanghai County, and in order to defend their honor, they could only fight. Fight! 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 Tens of thousands of soldiers roared, determined to defend the honor of their territory. The military formation emitted a monstrous aura, bringing with it blood and fire, sweeping over, threatening to drown the grasslands, turning it into a sea of blood. Ouyang Shuo stood on the high platform, in the eye of the storm, issuing orders, dictating everything. Such an aura, such a lineup. Even if Ouyang Shuo was reincarnated, he could not help but feel his blood boil. To be continued. Chapter 259. W equals O backslash 2P H E GH underscore E. As such, he commanded an invincible army, turning swords into plows, sweeping across the world. After the ceremony, Ouyang Shuo began to call out the generals. Wang Feng, here. Wang Feng stepped out and knelt on one knee. You will lead the Forbidden Brigade and guard the left side as the general of the left side. Yes, Linny, I'm here. Lin, he stepped out as well. You will lead the 2nd Brigade of the 1st Division and guard the right side as the general of the right side. Yes. Ouyang Shuo arranged for elite cavalry units on the left and right sides. The 3 brigades of the city guards formed the middle army, with Ouyang Shuo personally in charge. Shanghai County and Yi County city guards formed the front line, while Poole Water County city guards formed the back line as the reserve force. In the city guards brigade, the archers took the vanguard, the shield soldiers at the back, and the cavalry on the flanks. Such an army was invincible. After the roll call, Ouyang Shuo pulled out the tang sword from his waist and waved it forward. Move out. The vast army moved out immediately. Other than the sound of footsteps and horses neighing, there was no other sound. The army crossed the moat outside the city and marched towards Tianfeng tribe. Dariachi was not an ordinary person. Although he appeared arrogant when he received the messenger, He had been guarding Yui County ever since the messenger left. Such a large-scale ceremony outside Yui County naturally did not escape his eyes. The huge army of the opponent, the magnificent army, all of them were terrifying. The cavalry from the North Barracks returned at the right time, giving him a wake-up call. The Lord's flag that was raised on the city walls of Yui County made Dariachi at a loss. Only then did he know that Yui County was just a subsidiary territory of the opponent. The real base camp had yet to appear. At this moment, Dariachi finally understood the meaning of the marquee that the messenger had mentioned yesterday. One could not be called a marquee without sweeping across all four sides. Inside the tribe's tent, Dariachi furrowed his brows and flew into a rage. Conspiracy. This is a conspiracy. A big conspiracy against our sky-abundant tribe. The joy of victory had long since vanished, and all that was left was endless regret. Indeed, Ouyang Shua's string of actions like throwing out bait, sending emissaries, and issuing orders were all for the sake of occupying the moral high ground. In this way, the sky-abundant tribe was unreasonable and unreasonable. They were in the wrong first, so it was only natural that they would be attacked. Naturally, they would not be able to incite the other tribes to unite against a common enemy. Patriarch, what should we do now? The tribal nobles were like birds startled by the mere twang of a bow. What can we do? It's just a battle. Hu Chi-tu, the representative of the pro-war faction, said indifferently. Shut up. Dariachi was furious. If it wasn't for Hu Chi-tu's instigation, he wouldn't have been in this mess today. Now a disaster was upon him, yet this person was still so arrogant. He was truly foolish. General Hukitu must be joking. The other party has an army of over 10,000. How are we supposed to fight them? Some nobles were dissatisfied. When they conquered the market, the nobles admired Hukitu. Now that the tables had turned, the nobles' attitudes had also taken a 180-degree turn, and they were now blaming Hukitu for his reckless actions. Little did they know that the ones who had advocated attacking the market were the nobles. After being choked by the patriarch and the nobles, Hu Chi-tu's face turned red with anger. Anxious to save his image, he said fiercely, "How can the other party's combat power compare to us, the children of the grassland?" Dariachi shook his head, not wanting to pay attention to Hu Chi-tu. He turned to the nobles and said in a deep voice, "The only thing we could do now is to either fight or ask for help. What is everyone's opinion? Tell me. Ask for help? Ask for help from whom? Right now, we are in the wrong. Those tribes are waiting to see us make a fool of ourselves. It's already good enough that they didn't hit us when we're down. How could they possibly help us?" That's right, that's right. Dariachi held his forehead with his hand. He had a terrible headache. He said irritably, "This won't do, that won't do. Then what do you guys think we should do?" The nobles looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. "How about we return the loot to them?" One of the nobles said weakly. "Hey, it's too late. We agreed to the other party's messenger's conditions yesterday. We just refused, but the other party has already gathered their army and issued a declaration of war. It's obvious that they don't want to let this go." Gloomy clouds shrouded the tent, and the atmosphere became more and more oppressive. At this moment, one of the nobles stood up and said tentatively, How about we surrender?" As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. It was like opening Pandora's box. Surrender? The nobles stammered, their eyes flashing. "No. How can the children of the grassland surrender without a fight?" Hu Chi-tu shouted unwillingly. Dariachi sat in the seat of honor. He felt a chill in his heart. He knew that the worst result was coming. He was powerless to stop it. The cowardice and fear in the eyes of the nobles was as obvious as the cattle and sheep on the grassland. Although the nobles were hesitant, in fact, they were the core of the tribe and had the right to speak. Since the nobles had already decided to surrender, even if he, as the patriarch, did not agree, he could not completely mobilize the army. One must know that the logistics lifeline of the army was in the hands of the nobles. Dariachi closed his eyes, his expression desolate. His imperial hegemony had come to nothing. After a long time, Dariachi said, Hairigu, I will leave the surrender negotiations to you. Hairigu, the nobles who proposed to surrender, stood up and said, Yes. Patriarch, you can't. The children still have the strength to fight. Huchitu tried to stop him. Guards. Dariachi did not look at Huchitu, but called for the guards. Here. For guards walked into the tent. Take Huchitu away and put him in prison. Dariachi knew that one of the conditions put forward by the other party's envoy was to hand over the leader, otherwise Huchitu would not be able to escape death. In order to prevent any accidents, Dariachi simply made up his mind and locked Huchitu up first. Patriarch. Huchitu's face was full of shock, and he was almost speechless. To be honest, Huchitu was Dariachi's true confidant. Locking Huchitu up was also very painful. Unfortunately, the situation did not allow him to show favoritism. Take him away. Dariachi did not dare to look at Huchitu's desperate eyes and said ruthlessly, Yes. The guards were all hardcore loyal to the Patriarch. Although they were shocked, they did not hesitate to carry out the order, disarm Huchitu, and take him away. Huchitu's heart turned cold. His heart was like dead ashes. He did not resist and obediently allowed himself to be taken away. Disperse, Dariachi said weakly. With his hegemony gone, Dariachi's spirit, energy, and spirit also disappeared, losing the heroic appearance he had in the past. When the nobles saw the state of their patriarch, they did not know what to feel. One by one, they silently left. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.